Welcome, my fellow seekers of the unknown, to another chilling episode of our haunted storytelling series. Tonight, we journey to the heart of Texas, to a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. Presidio La Bahía in Golia. This 18th century Spanish fort has witnessed countless tales of valor, betrayal, and sorrow. But beneath its weathered stone walls lies a darker legacy, one of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena. In this episode, we delve into the top 25 hauntings of Presidio, LA, each story more unsettling than the last. From phantom soldiers to eerie whispers, the fort's past refuses to stay buried. So, dim the lights, gather close, and prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. The Goliad Massacre stands as one of the darkest chapters in Texas history. In March 1836, during the Texas Revolution, the site of the massacre, near present-day Goliad, Texas, has since become a place where history and legend blur, where the echoes of past horrors are said to linger, and where the spirits of those who fell in the sand are still restless. The events leading up to the massacre began with the Texian Army's struggle for independence from Mexico. In late February 1836, Texian forces under Colonel James Fannin were stationed at Presidio La and Goliad. Despite knowing the Mexican army was advancing, Fannin hesitated to retreat. When he finally attempted to move his men, logistical delays and poor planning led to their capture by Santa Anna's troops. They were promised lenient treatment as prisoners of war, but Santa Anna, determined to crush the rebellion with terror, ordered that the Texians be executed. On Palm Sunday, March 27, 1836, the prisoners were marched out of their holding pens in small groups. Along the way, some attempted to escape, but most were shot or bayoneted in cold blood. The ground where the soldiers fell became soaked with the blood of the young men who had fought for freedom. Today, visitors report that the land itself seems heavy with sorrow, as though it has absorbed the anguish of that day and refuses to let it go. Those who come to the site often describe an unsettling atmosphere. The air grows inexplicably cold, even on the warmest of Texas days. Many have spoken of the sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes track every step. Some visitors have reported hearing faint, anguished cries carried by the wind, too soft to be real, yet unmistakably human. These sounds are said to rise and fall in waves, echoing the panic and despair of soldiers who knew their end was near but could not escape it. Eyewitness accounts from the 19th century are limited, but the few that exist describe acts of bravery and desperation. Some Texians refused to kneel, choosing to face their execution standing, while others sang hymns in unison, their voices carrying across the fields. Today, some claim to hear these ghostly hymns at dusk, haunting the empty landscape as a reminder of courage in the face of certain death. Campers and hikers in the area have occasionally reported seeing shadowy figures moving at the edge of their vision, vanishing when approached. Others have captured unexplained orbs of light in photographs, hovering near the spot where the executions took place. Local legends have grown over the decades, fueled by stories passed down from generation to generation. One tale tells of a young soldier who tried to flee the execution line and was shot just as he reached the edge of the clearing. His spirit is said to wander endlessly, retracing his final steps and calling out in a voice that can sometimes be heard by those who tread lightly through the historic grounds. Another story speaks of a group of apparitions, dressed in tattered uniforms, forming lines as if preparing for roll call, only to vanish when anyone gets too close. Witnesses described a profound sense of loss, a weight on the chest, and the sudden, inexplicable feeling of being surrounded. Even modern technology cannot always dispel the eerie presence. Paranormal investigators have brought cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic sensors, seeking proof of the supernatural. On more than one occasion, devices have recorded voices whispering in Spanish and English, though no one was present to speak. The persistent reports suggest that the trauma of the massacre may have left a permanent imprint on the land, a psychic scar that refuses to fade. The Goliad site has been preserved as a state historic landmark, and annual commemorations honor the memory of those who died. Yet, even Even amidst ceremonies and historical reenactments, visitors report sensations that cannot be explained. Some describe sudden shivers or goosebumps without wind or cold. Others feel an oppressive heaviness, a reminder that the ground is hallowed not only by history but by tragedy. In some moments, the whispers of the past seem almost tangible, urging reflection and respect for those who were lost. Stories of hauntings at Goliad are not limited to the immediate vicinity of the massacre. Locals claim that the spirits sometimes follow the unwary into the town itself. People have reported fleeting glimpses of pale figures at windows or along darkened streets, figures that vanish when approached. Strange sounds, like the clatter of bayonets or distant marching, have been heard late at night. Some say the spirits are drawn to those who acknowledge the history, or perhaps to those who feel an unspoken empathy for the lives lost in the sand and blood of Goliad. Over time, the Goliad massacre has taken on the dual roles of historical lesson and supernatural enigma. It reminds visitors of the brutality of war and the fragility of promises in times of conflict, while simultaneously serving as a magnet for ghost stories and paranormal curiosity. For historians, it is a testament to courage and sacrifice. For thrill-seekers and believers in the paranormal, it is a haunting ground where the past never truly rests. Walking the fields today, one might notice the stark contrast between the serene Texas landscape and the echoes of violence that occurred almost 2 centuries ago. The wind moves through the tall grass, carrying whispers that some swear are not natural. At dusk, shadows stretch long across the fields, and the temperature seems to drop without reason. Visitors report an unshakable feeling of being observed, a presence that is both sorrowful and restless. It is as if the souls of the fallen soldiers linger, trapped in the moment of their final, tragic fate. The legacy of Goliad endures in both history books and ghost stories. It is a place where the cries of the past refuse to be silenced, and where the memories of over 300 soldiers echo across time. Those who visit often leave with a deep sense of reverence, an awareness that the ground beneath their feet is not just earth, but a repository of suffering, courage, and the enduring power of human spirit. Whether one interprets the chills, whispers, and shadows as supernatural or psychological, there is no denying that Goliad remains a place haunted by the memory of its darkest day. A site where the past continues to watch, wait, and whisper to those who wander too close. The massacre at Goliad is more than a historical event, it's a lingering presence. Each year, more visitors come to honor, remember, and perhaps catch a glimpse of the echoes that refuse to die. And while the soldiers' lives were cruelly cut short, their stories and spirits endure, carried by the wind, the earth, and the whispers that still haunt the site today. The old fort sits atop a hill, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind and rain, yet it remains a steadfast sentinel of history. Visitors during the day marvel at the architecture, the thick walls, and the cannon placements that once guarded the perimeter. But after dusk, a different kind of attention is demanded, one that is quieter, colder, and impossible to ignore. It is then that the legend of the Phantom Drummer comes alive. The story begins during the Revolution, when the fort was a hub of military activity. Soldiers marched in formation, orders were barked across the courtyard, and a young drummer boy kept time for the troops with his small but resonant drum. He was only 12 or 13, a boy barely old enough to shave, yet his hands were steady, and his rhythm reliable. The drum was his voice, his way of being heard amid the chaos of cannons, muskets, and shouting. One fateful night, during a sudden attack, the boy was caught in the crossfire. Accounts vary. Some say he was trying to rally the soldiers. Others claim he was retreating when a stray bullet struck him down. In any case, he died clutching his drum, and according to legend, his spirit could not leave the fort. His life had been tied to the beat, and even death could not silence it. Since that night, visitors and soldiers alike have reported hearing the unmistakable sound of a drum echoing through the barracks. It starts subtly, a soft tap that could be mistaken for settling wood or the wind against a stone. But then the rhythm grows, steady and deliberate, a cadence that seems both urgent and sorrowful. Those who have stayed in the fort overnight describe waking to the sound, their hearts pounding, only to find no one in sight. The drumbeat is always precise, never faltering, a perfection that no human could sustain for hours alone. Paranormal enthusiasts and historians have documented multiple accounts of the phenomenon. One visitor, a retired soldier, described sitting in the officers' quarters late at night when the beat began. It was faint at first, he said, like someone tapping their fingers on a table. Then it grew louder, stronger, as if marching through the room. I swear I could feel the vibrations in my chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. He followed the sound through empty hallways, past darkened rooms, until it seemed to vanish at the far end of the barracks. Another story comes from a tour guide, who had spent years narrating the fort's history. One night, while locking up after a private evening tour, she heard the drum, unlike the others. This time it was accompanied by the faint sound of boots hitting the stone floor. She froze, knowing the fort was empty, yet the rhythm continued, a ghostly performance that played on loop. The guide later learned that the drummer boy had been stationed near that very corridor, leading some to believe that the apparition still marches where he once did, unseen and unheard, except for the drum. The sound of the drum seems to have a strange effect on those who hear it. Some report a sudden chill that runs from head to toe, a shiver that persists even under thick blankets. Others feel a strange pressure in the air, as if the fort itself is leaning in, listening, or perhaps trying to push them away. More than one person has claimed to see a shadowy figure moving at the edge of their vision, always aligned with the rhythm, disappearing when they attempt to focus on it. The phantom drummer, it seems, prefers to remain just out of reach, a presence felt rather than fully seen. The barracks themselves are often described as unnaturally quiet during the day, as though the walls themselves are waiting. Tourists have said that while exploring the fort in sunlight, they felt as if the rooms held their breath. Guides explained that the fort preserves every echo, every memory of the soldiers who lived and died there. But the drum's rhythm seems to linger in a unique way, pulsing with a life of its own. It is almost as if the young drummer's spirit has fused with the very stones of the fort, making him impossible to ignore after dark. Some researchers have attempted to capture the drum's sound with recording equipment. Audio devices placed in the barracks overnight often pick up faint taps that escalate into a regular, unmistakable drum pattern, only to vanish when approached. Temperature readings frequently drop several degrees at the precise moment the drum beat begins, reinforcing the sensation that a cold, invisible presence moves through the space. Even cameras occasionally capture odd distortions in the air, mists that form and dissolve in time with the beat, hinting at something beyond the natural. Legend has it that the phantom drummer is not malevolent, merely persistent. Some believe that he continues to play for the sake of the soldiers he once guided, maintaining a rhythm that echoes the order and discipline of his life. Others claim he is trapped by trauma, forced to repeat the moment of his death for eternity, the drum acting as a tether between the living world and whatever lies beyond. Those who have experienced the phenomenon describe a strange mix of fear and sadness, an awareness that they are witnessing the final echo of a life cut short, a child soldier still fulfilling his duty beyond the grave. Even today, the story draws curiosity seekers, paranormal investigators, and history enthusiasts. Overnight stays in the fort are sometimes arranged for those brave enough to listen for the drum. The phenomenon is unpredictable, often beginning at the stroke of midnight or during the quietest hours of the night. When it comes, the sound is unmistakable. The tapping of a small drum carried across empty halls, bouncing off stone walls, lingering in rooms long after the visitor has left. Some leave with nothing more than chills and wonder, while others swear they glimpsed a shadowy figure keeping time with the drum. The phantom drummer has become a symbol of the fort itself, a reminder that history is never truly silent. Whose hands could barely wrap around the drumsticks, continues to play a song of loyalty, duty, and sorrow. Every echo through the barracks carries his presence, a pulse of memory that defies time. For those who listen carefully, the rhythm of the past can still be heard, tapping its way through the darkness, calling attention to a life, a duty, and a story that will never be forgotten. The chapel stands quietly amid a small graveyard, its stone walls worn by centuries of wind, rain, and time. During the day, it is serene, a place for reflection, prayer, or simply admiration of the ancient architecture. But those who linger into the evening, when the sun dips behind the trees and shadows stretch long across the worn pews, sometimes hear something that is not part of the ordinary world. A soft, sorrowful sound, barely audible at first, floats through the air, the gentle, heart-wrenching sobs of a woman. The legend of the crying woman has been whispered for generations. It is said she was a widow, young and devoted, whose husband went to fight in a long-forgotten battle. He never returned. News of his death arrived in a small, stark letter, delivered to her trembling hands long after the battle had ended. Consumed by grief, she wandered the chapel day after day, speaking prayers aloud, hoping against hope that he might somehow return to her. When her heart finally broke completely, she vanished from the village. Some say she died in the chapel. Others claim she wandered into the night, a soul too full of sorrow to rest. Whatever her fate, her presence is said to remain, mourning eternally for a love lost to war and circumstance. Visitors to the chapel report a strange atmosphere even before the sobbing begins. The air feels heavier, cooler, as if the walls themselves carry the weight of grief. Candle flames flicker without wind, shadows stretch in impossible directions, and an eerie stillness settles over the pews. At first, the sobs are so soft that they could be mistaken for the wind or the faint rustling of leaves outside. But as one remains in the chapel, the sound becomes clearer, unmistakably human. A woman weeping for a love she cannot reclaim. One visitor, a historian researching local legends, described the experience in detail. She had spent the afternoon photographing the chapel and taking notes when, around twilight, she heard a quiet sniffle. She paused, certain someone was hiding in the shadows. But when she looked around, the chapel was empty. Then the sound grew. A soft, rhythmic sobbing that seemed to echo from the altar itself. Her skin prickled, and she felt a weight pressing on her chest, as though the sorrow in the chapel was pressing outward, reaching for anyone who would listen. She left the chapel that night shaken, but she could not stop thinking about the sound, the unmistakable, mournful wail of a woman lost to grief. Others have reported similar experiences. Couples visiting the chapel in the evening sometimes hear the sobs only after they separate, each person hearing the same sorrowful cries yet unable to see anyone in the pews. Paranormal investigators, too, have attempted to record the phenomenon. Audio devices often pick up faint crying, rising and falling in cadence, sometimes accompanied by the rustle of fabric, as though someone is moving through the empty chapel. Some recordings capture the sobs in the middle of the night, when the chapel is locked and unattended, a reminder that the sound is not bound by the presence of the living. Some believe the woman's grief is so profound that it lingers as a residual energy, imprinting itself on the building itself. Her cries are a reflection of a heart that could not heal, an emotional echo of a life cut short by tragedy. Visitors often describe an overwhelming sense of empathy, a deep sadness that seems to seep into their bones. They feel compelled to sit quietly, whisper prayers, or leave flowers at the altar, hoping to offer some comfort to the unseen mourner. Local legends add layers to her story. One tells of a man who visited the chapel to propose marriage to his ex. He knelt by the altar. He heard the soft sobs and felt an invisible hand brush against his shoulder. The moment passed, and the chapel was silent again. Yet he left that night, convinced that the crying woman was watching. A sentinel of lost love, whose presence reminded the living of the cost of war, heartbreak, and devotion. Another tale speaks of villagers who would occasionally glimpse a shadowy figure in a white gown, drifting past the stained glass windows or along the aisle, always head bowed, always weeping. She is said to vanish when approached, leaving only the sound of her sorrow lingering in the air. The sobs sometimes appear to respond to the emotions of those present. Witnesses report that if they are particularly somber or reflective, the crying intensifies, as if the spirit recognizes a kindred sadness. Conversely, Those who enter laughing or joking claim the sound fades or disappears entirely. It is as though the crying woman's presence is attuned to emotional resonance, drawing near to those who understand sorrow and retreating from those who do not. Even the natural world seems to respond to her presence. Animals passing near the chapel often grow restless. Dogs bark at empty windows, and birds avoid the courtyard entirely. Visitors sometimes notice sudden drops in temperature, a chill that settles over the chapel even in warm weather. Candles flicker or extinguish, and the wind through the trees carries an unearthly timbre, blending with the faint sobs to create an auditory tapestry of grief. The chapel becomes more than stone and glass. It transforms into a vessel for the enduring heartache of a woman whose love was taken by fate. Historians and skeptics debate the origin of the cries, yet the experiences are remarkably consistent. Those who hear the sobbing speak of it as unmistakably human, mournful, and impossibly sorrowful. They describe the sensation of standing in the presence of someone or something that has felt a profound loss, a grief that transcends life itself. Some leave flowers or tokens, hoping to soothe the spirit. Others leave quietly, moved and unsettled by the knowledge that not all love stories find closure. The crying woman of the chapel has become a symbol of devotion and loss. She embodies the way grief can linger long after life has ended, haunting the places where love was once celebrated and cruelly taken, too deep to fade. Those who hear her sobs are left with a sense of reverence, a quiet acknowledgement that they have witnessed not only a legend but an echo of a heart that continues to mourn, eternally searching for a love lost to time and tragedy. The fort sits on a rocky bluff, overlooking the river below. Its thick stone walls, a testament to centuries of military strategy and defense. By day, it is a place of history and tourism, a reminder of battles fought and lives dedicated to duty. But when the sun begins to dip behind the horizon, shadows lengthen, and a strange stillness takes hold. The fort transforms. It becomes a place where the past refuses to rest, where time seems to warp, and where the shadowy figure makes its presence known. Reports of the figure stretch back decades, whispered among locals, soldiers, and visitors alike. It is always seen at dusk, when the fading light casts long, uneven shadows along the stone battlements. Witnesses describe a tall, dark figure, dressed in the worn uniform of a sentry, moving silently along the walls. Its movements are deliberate, measured, almost ritualistic, as if performing a duty that transcends life itself. Those who have glimpsed it report a sense of awe mixed with unease, an instinctual recognition that this is not merely a human observer, but a lingering echo of the past. The origin of the shadowy figure is rooted in the fort's storied history. Generations ago, during a particularly tense period of border conflicts, a sentry was assigned to patrol the walls from dusk until dawn. Accounts say he was fiercely devoted to his post, refusing to rest or leave, even under extreme conditions. One evening, during an enemy skirmish, his comrades found him the next morning, still at his post, his body slumped but his eyes seemingly fixed on the horizon. Legend claims that he never truly left the walls. Visitors who witnessed the shadowy figure describe an almost tangible weight in the air, a presence that makes the hair on their arms rise. The figure appears as a silhouette, completely dark against the fading light, with no discernible facial features. Its movements are smooth, deliberate, and unwavering, pacing along the ramparts as though inspecting the perimeter or standing guard against threats unseen. Some describe a faint outline of a musket in its hands. Others see the glint of a belt or strap across its chest. Despite attempts to approach, the figure never reacts, never acknowledges observers, and often vanishes when the light completely fades. One account comes from a night watchman who had been assigned to the fort during a historical reenactment. Around twilight, he noticed a dark shape moving along the wall. At first, he assumed it was a fellow reenactor, but when he called out, no answer came. The figure continued, its slow, precise pacing, stopping occasionally to peer over the edge of the battlements. The watchman reported feeling a sudden chill, a drop in temperature that seemed to follow the figure wherever it went. When he approached with a flashlight, the shadowy figure dissipated into the night. leaving behind only the echo of heavy boots on stone. Another witness, a tourist visiting the fort with a local guide, described seeing the figure from the courtyard below. The guide explained that many believe it is the spirit of a soldier who never abandoned his post, even in death. As the sun dipped lower, the figure appeared, stretching taller than any man should, moving with unnerving precision along the ramparts. The witness felt an overwhelming sense of vigilance and solitude emanating from the apparition, as though the fort itself were alive, and the shadowy figure was its guardian. The fort's atmosphere seems to respond to the figure's presence. Animals in the vicinity often behave strangely. Dogs growl at empty walls, and birds avoid the ramparts entirely at dusk. Visitors report sudden gusts of wind that carry no scent, shadows that seem too long or misplaced, and a weight in the chest, an almost oppressive sense of being watched. Paranormal investigators have documented unexplained readings on electromagnetic devices, unusual cold spots, and faint sounds resembling footsteps along the stone corridors when no one is present. Some even report hearing the soft clink of a rifle strap, or the low murmur of commands in the wind. The shadowy figure is rarely aggressive, but its presence is undeniably commanding. Those who linger too long describe a sense of accountability, a feeling that the sentry is evaluating them, testing their intentions, or silently judging their respect for the fort and its history. Some historians suggest that the apparition is tied to a sense of duty so strong that it transcended death, binding the sentry's spirit to the walls he once patrolled. Others propose that the figure is a residual imprint, a psychic echo of past events that occasionally manifests for those sensitive enough to perceive it. Despite the decades of sightings, the figure remains elusive. Cameras fail to capture it clearly. Long exposure photos often show only a vague dark smudge along the walls. Audio recordings sometimes catch the faint tap of boots or the murmur of commands, but always without a source. People who spend the night on the ramparts report unease, as though the fort itself is alive and aware, its walls resonating with the presence of a soldier who refused to leave. Visitors often leave with a sense of reverence, understanding that the shadowy figure is a guardian, a sentinel of memory and history. Its pacing along the walls serves as a reminder of the lives devoted to duty, the sacrifices made to protect territory, and the indelible human spirit that refuses to rest even after death. For those who witness it, the experience is unsettling, yet profound, a glimpse into a world where the boundaries between life and afterlife blur, where duty and loyalty persist beyond the grave. Even in the modern day, the legend continues to draw curiosity seekers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. The shadowy figure has become a symbol of unwavering vigilance, an eternal watchman who patrols the fort's walls at dusk. Some leave tokens of respect, a coin, a flag, or a quiet nod to history, hoping to honor the spirit and its unyielding dedication. Others simply observe from a distance, grateful for the fleeting glimpse of something that belongs neither entirely to the past nor to the present. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the shadowy figure is a lasting presence, a story that embodies loyalty, duty, and the haunting beauty of history. It serves as a reminder that some souls cannot abandon their post, that the echoes of past lives can persist, and that the fort's walls hold more than stone, they hold memory, vigilance, and the silent march of a soldier who never truly left. The fort has stood for centuries, its thick stone walls a testament to countless battles and the soldiers who once called it home. During the day, it is a quiet place, visited by historians and tourists alike, drawn by the weight of history and the stories that linger in its corridors. But when night falls, the fort reveals a different kind of presence, one that cannot be seen yet is impossible to ignore. Visitors often speak of the unseen footsteps, soft, deliberate, and unyielding sounds echoing through the barracks and hallways, as though a soldier still patrols, awaiting orders that never come. The legend has its roots in a time when the fort was fully active, bustling with military life. Soldiers marched in formation, drills were conducted daily, and officers barked commands that echoed off the stone walls. Among the men was a young recruit, newly assigned and eager to prove his loyalty. He was diligent, precise, and unyielding in his adherence to duty. According to stories, one fateful night, he was ordered to patrol the barracks alone while the others rested. He took his assignment seriously, pacing back and forth through the darkened hallways, ensuring every corner was secure. But a surprise attack or accident accounts ended his life before he could complete his shift. His body was discovered the next morning, still aligned with his post, as if continuing to follow orders even in death. Since that night, the barracks have been haunted by the sound of footsteps. Visitors describe patterns, soft, rhythmic, and persistent, as if someone is walking with purpose along the wooden floors. The steps begin quietly, often mistaken for the natural creaks of an old building, but they quickly take on a distinct cadence, the unmistakable sound of boots moving back and forth in repetition. Those who experience it often report a growing sense of unease, a pressure in the air, and a feeling of being watched by someone unseen. One night, a tour guide recounting the fort's history noticed the sound herself while walking alone through the barracks after closing. At first, she thought a stray tourist had returned, or that her imagination was playing tricks. But the footsteps were too consistent, too deliberate to be accidental. They paced from one end of the hall to the other, stopping occasionally near empty bunks before resuming. She described a feeling of being observed, as though the soldier, whatever form he now took, was judging her presence, silently ensuring that the fort remained orderly, even in a time when it had long been abandoned. The unseen footsteps are not confined to a single area. Many report hearing them echoing through the hallways, rising and falling with a rhythmic precision that suggests military discipline. Occasionally, the sound changes subtly, a brief pause as if awaiting new orders, followed by a resumption of the steady march. The phenomenon has been reported during the day, though it is far more pronounced at night, when the fort is empty and the air is still. The combination of darkness, silence, and the echoing steps creates a sense of tension, as if the building itself is alive, infused with the energy of soldiers long gone. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the footsteps using audio recorders, cameras, and motion sensors. Many devices pick up the distinct tapping of boots on wooden floors, sometimes followed by subtle changes in temperature or air pressure. Some recordings capture a pause in the footsteps, as if the unseen soldier is listening, before they continue with unerring regularity. Cameras occasionally record fleeting shadows that move along the walls or across the hallways, too brief to identify, but seemingly synchronized with the sound of pacing. The reports suggest that the presence is not merely a memory of the past, but an active, restless force tied to the fort itself. Witnesses describe a range of emotions when encountering the unseen footsteps. Some feel fear, a natural response to the unknown, while others feel sadness or reverence, as though they are bearing witness to the continuation of a duty beyond death. Many leave tokens of respect, a note, a coin, or simply a quiet note acknowledging the soldier's enduring vigil. Some claim that the footsteps seem to slow or pause when the visitor is particularly quiet or respectful, as if the spirit senses the intentions of those who enter the barracks. Others who are loud or dismissive report that the pacing continues, with added intensity, perhaps a reminder that orders must always be followed. Stories passed down through the local community add layers of meaning to the legend. One tale tells of a soldier who once tried to confront the source of the footsteps, chasing the sound down a hallway only to find nothing. When he returned to the same spot hours later, he heard the steps resume, exactly where they had paused, as if the soldier had waited for him to leave before continuing his eternal patrol. Another story speaks of a couple who spent the night in the barracks during a reenactment. They awoke to the steady cadence of boots pacing back and forth, and one claimed to see the shadow of a tall figure moving silently along the wall before vanishing. Both described a mix of fear and awe, an understanding that they had encountered something beyond ordinary explanation. Even modern visitors, armed with smartphones and cameras, report unexplained experiences. Footage often shows empty corridors, yet the sounds of marching continue in the background. Photos occasionally capture faint, dark shapes, seemingly moving in time with the steps. And always, there is the sensation of presence, a weight in the air, a pressure on the chest, a feeling that someone or something is observing every action. The unseen footsteps serve as a reminder of the fort's history, of the countless soldiers who trained, fought, and sometimes died within its walls. They symbolize dedication and discipline, a ghostly echo of duty so strong that it transcends mortality. For those who hear the pacing, it is impossible to ignore the idea that the soldier is still carrying out his orders, ensuring the fort remains secure even in an age when the battles are long over. The barracks, with their worn wooden floors and echoing halls, have become a bridge between past and present, a place where the living can sense the lingering presence of the dead. The unseen footsteps are not malicious, but they are insistent, a spectral rhythm that reminds visitors that history is not silent. It is carried in the echoes of boots, in the cadence of a soldier's eternal patrol, and in the weight of a duty that cannot be abandoned, even beyond death. The fort stands as a testament to centuries of history, its stone walls weathered by wind, rain, and countless footsteps of soldiers long gone. Visitors marvel at its architecture, the cannon placements, and the stories of battles fought within and around its walls. Yet, for those who spend time exploring the fort, a different sensation often emerges, one that cannot be explained by architecture or weather. Certain areas, particularly near the chapel and the old jail, are inexplicably cold, even in the heat of summer. These cold spots have long been a source of fascination and fear, believed by many to be the lingering presence of spirits who cannot move on from the fort. The phenomenon is often first noticed in the chapel, a small but solemn space where soldiers once prayed for protection and peace. Visitors report a sudden drop in temperature upon entering, a chill that seeps through clothing and settles deep in the bones. The cold is not uniform. It comes in waves, a pulse that seems to follow footsteps or shift depending on where one stands. Some describe the sensation as a breath of icy air, though no doors or windows are open. Others feel a more encompassing chill, as if the temperature itself has been rewritten in that particular corner of the fort. Many who experience these cold spots describe an accompanying sense of awareness, a feeling that they are being watched by unseen eyes. It is not always frightening, but it is unnerving, subtle pressure on the chest, a faint tingling along the spine. Visitors often report hearing whispers, soft and indistinct, as if someone is speaking just beyond perception. The combination of cold and presence creates an atmosphere that is difficult to ignore, an invisible reminder that the past lingers in the stones and shadows of the fort. The old jail is another hotspot for unexplained chills. Constructed with thick stone walls and narrow barred windows, it was used to confine prisoners, deserters, and sometimes captured enemies. Accounts from the past describe harsh conditions, punishment, and despair. Today, those who step inside often experience the same icy sensations reported near the chapel, but here, the cold feels heavier, more oppressive, as if it carries the weight of fear and suffering accumulated over decades. Tourists sometimes report feeling a hand brush against their shoulder or the sudden sensation of being pressed against the wall, though no one is there. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to these areas, attempting to document the cold spots with thermometers, infrared cameras, and other equipment. Temperature readings frequently show dramatic drops, sometimes plunging more than 10 degrees in a matter of seconds. Thermal imaging occasionally reveals anomalies, cold patches that appear and disappear without a physical source. Audio equipment sometimes captures faint whispers, the creak of unseen doors, or the clatter of footsteps in empty corridors. Despite the data, there is no conventional explanation for the phenomena, leaving investigators and visitors alike unsettled and intrigued. Some believe the cold spots are residual energy left behind by traumatic events. The chapel, for instance, was a place of both solace and grief, where soldiers prayed for loved ones and for the safety of comrades. Many who died nearby or within the fort may have left a psychic imprint, an echo of emotion and presence that lingers. The old jail, filled with suffering and confinement, carries a different kind of energy, one that manifests as a heavier, more oppressive chill. In both cases, the temperature drop is thought to be the fort itself, responding to the weight of memory, preserving the emotional resonance of the past. Visitors often describe a peculiar timing to these experiences. Cold spots appear more frequently at dusk or during the night, when the fort is quiet and the shadows lengthen. Some say the phenomena are strongest when one is alone, suggesting that the spirits or whatever is causing the chills react to attention or presence. There are stories of people lingering near the chapel altar, feeling the temperature plummet as though a figure is standing nearby. Others report standing outside the jail, sensing a cold breeze brushing their face, though the windows are sealed and the air is still. The sensation of cold can also carry emotional weight. Those who experience it often describe a feeling of melancholy, unease, or reflection, as if the chill is not merely physical, but psychological. It is as though the fort is reminding visitors of the lives lived and lost within its walls, of struggles, devotion, and heartbreak. The cold is not aggressive or malevolent, but it is insistent, a subtle presence that demands acknowledgement. For some, it inspires quiet contemplation. For others, it provokes a shiver that lingers long after they have left. Local legend adds personality to the cold spots. Stories tell of soldiers who died during battles, of prisoners who perished in the jail, and of clergy who remained steadfast in the chapel. Each is said to have left a part of themselves behind, tethered to the fort by memory, emotion, or unfinished business. Visitors who respect the history of the place often feel the chills as a sort of recognition, a greeting from the past. Those who treat the fort casually or without reverence sometimes report the cold as sharper, more intrusive, as if the spirits are asserting their presence. Even in modern times, technology cannot dispel the mystery. Air conditioning cannot explain localized drops. Fans cannot account for the precise placement of the chill. And modern construction has done little to diminish the occurrences. Cameras and audio devices capture anomalies, but the human experience, the sudden shiver, the sense of observation, the hair-raising sensation of a cold spot is something that remains beyond measurement. It is personal, subjective, and hauntingly real to those who encounter it. The cold spots at the fort are more than just temperature fluctuations. They are a bridge to the past. A reminder that the fort is alive with memory. Each icy gust, each wave of chill, carries the weight of lives once lived, duties once performed, and tragedies that shaped the course of history. For visitors who pause and feel, the cold becomes a connection, an invitation to acknowledge the presence of those who linger in the afterlife, tethered to the places they once inhabited. Whether skeptics attribute the phenomenon to drafts and architecture, or believers see it as proof of restless spirits, the effect is undeniable. The chapel and old jail remain centers of mystery, places where time bends and the past whispers through the cold. For those who walk the corridors alone, especially as dusk falls and shadows deepen, the chill is a constant companion, a subtle reminder that some presences refuse to fade, and that the fort holds more than history. It holds echoes of the lives and souls that continue to linger within its stone walls. The fort stands silent under the fading light of evening, its stone walls casting long shadows across the courtyard. By day, it is a place of history, visited by tourists who admire the thick ramparts, the cannon placements, and the stories of battles fought within its walls. But when night falls, a different spectacle emerges, one that defies explanation and continues to captivate those who witness it. Strange lights flicker in the windows of the fort's chapel, appearing and disappearing without rhyme or reason. Locals and visitors alike have long whispered about these mysterious illuminations, speculating that they are the lanterns of spirits still searching for comrades lost to the past. The legend of the lights dates back centuries, rooted in the fort's history as a military stronghold. During periods of war and unrest, the chapel served as a place of refuge, prayer, and memorial for soldiers who fought and died on the grounds. Many of these men formed close bonds, comrades in arms, who relied on one another for survival. Accounts suggest that when tragedy struck, whether through battle, disease, or accidents, some soldiers never returned to their tents or barracks. Their deaths were sudden, violent, and often without proper closure. It is said that some spirits remain restless, wandering the chapel in search of those who fell alongside them, carrying lanterns to light the way through the darkness. Witnesses describe the lights in various ways. Some see small, flickering points, like candle flames, dancing in a gentle breeze. Others report larger, brighter glows that pulse as though responding to an invisible rhythm. Occasionally, the lights move, shifting from window to window, or floating along the chapel's interior before vanishing entirely. The flickering is not accompanied by any sound, no footsteps, no doors creaking. Only the visual presence of a glowing figure or lantern that seems intent on guiding or seeking something unseen. One evening, a group of historians visiting the fort decided to remain after the gates closed, hoping to observe the phenomenon firsthand. Around dusk, the first flickers appeared in the upper windows of the chapel. At first, the group thought it might be reflections from the nearby river or lanterns carried by other visitors. But as the light continued to flicker in patterns inconsistent with natural sources, a chill spread through the group. The lights moved slowly, tracing the outlines of pews and altars inside, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. One historian described feeling an unseen presence, as though someone or something was walking among the pews, searching for a familiar face long gone. Another account comes from a tour guide who worked at the fort for years. She recalled nights when the chapel appeared completely empty, yet visitors would report seeing lights flickering in the windows. Some insisted they could make out shapes of figures moving behind the glass, lanterns in hand, tracing paths along the floor, as if searching for comrades lost to history. The guide herself witnessed the lights once during a late evening inspection. She described them as small points of illumination, moving deliberately across the windows, vanishing abruptly as she approached. Though she felt fear at first, she also sensed an unspoken sadness emanating from the chapel, a grief so profound it seemed to manifest as light. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phenomenon using cameras, night vision equipment, and thermal imaging. Many nights, cameras capture inexplicable glows that shift or disappear when approached, consistent with eyewitness reports. Thermal imaging often shows nothing, no heat signatures, no human presence, yet the lights remain visible to the naked eye. Some recordings even capture the flickers, accompanied by subtle movements in shadows or faint traces of mist, suggesting a presence that is both visual and physical. Yet no definitive explanation has been found, leaving the phenomenon shrouded in mystery. Some believe the lights represent the spirits of soldiers unable to find peace, endlessly searching for friends and comrades who fell in battle. Others suggest they are lanterns left behind by devoted priests or caretakers, spirits bound to the chapel by duty and devotion. Regardless of the origin, the lights are universally described as purposeful. They do not merely flicker randomly, but move with intent, as though they are guided by memory or longing. Visitors often describe emotional reactions to the lights. Some feel a deep melancholy, sensing the weight of loss and camaraderie carried by the spirits. Others report awe or even hope, interpreting the illumination as a reminder that bonds formed in life continue to exist beyond death. Many leave offerings, such as candles or notes, placed near the chapel in hopes of honoring the unseen guardians or easing their eternal search. It is said that those who show respect may see the lights linger longer, flickering gently as if acknowledging the gesture, while those who enter carelessly experience the lights disappearing abruptly, vanishing without trace. The timing of the lights is equally mysterious. They are most often seen just after dusk, when the world is caught between day and night. Yet they occasionally appear in the dead of night or in the early hours before dawn. Some claim that weather influences their appearance. Fog, mist, or cloudy skies seem to make the lights more pronounced, casting shimmering reflections across the chapel walls and the courtyard beyond. On rare occasions, they have been reported during storms, flickering defiantly in the windows as if refusing to be extinguished by wind and rain. The chapel itself has become a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to witness the phenomenon, moving in ways that defy logic or physical explanation. Some even claim to see faint silhouettes alongside the lantern's ghostly figures, moving with precision and purpose, occasionally pausing as if acknowledging the living presence of observers, before continuing their endless search. Whether skeptics attribute the lights to reflections, electrical anomalies, or tricks of perception, the experiences are remarkably consistent. Countless accounts over decades describe the same patterns: flickering illumination, deliberate movement, and an unshakable sense of purpose. The mysterious lights of the fort's chapel endure as a symbol of loyalty, grief, and the invisible bonds that tie the living to the dead. They serve as a reminder that even in the stillness of night, the fort is alive with memory, with devotion, and with spirits who refuse to rest until their search is complete. For those who stand in the courtyard and gaze at the flickering windows, the lights are more than a curiosity. They are a connection to the past, a glimpse of souls who once walked the same stone floors, whose bonds of friendship and duty remain unbroken, guiding them through the darkness with lanterns that burn long after life has ended. The fort stands as a monument to centuries of history, its thick stone walls having withstood storms, battles, and the passage of time. During the day, it is a place of quiet reflection, where tourists and historians wander through the courtyards, barracks, and chapel, admiring the architecture and imagining the lives that once filled its halls. But as the sun dips below the horizon and shadows stretch across the ramparts, the fort reveals a more enigmatic presence. Within its walls, visitors have reported hearing whispers, soft, elusive, and almost impossible to locate. These whispers seem to come not from any living voice, but from the very stones themselves, as if the fort has absorbed the memories of its past and is now attempting to communicate them to anyone who will listen. The phenomenon of the whispering walls is not new. Locals have passed down tales of strange murmurs echoing through the corridors, sometimes faint and barely audible, other times loud enough to cause an involuntary shiver. Some claim that the fort, having been a site of intense military activity, has absorbed the conversations, secrets, and fears of the soldiers who once lived and worked there. Orders shouted, plans whispered, confessions of fear or griefful of these could be embedded in the stone, replaying themselves to those sensitive enough to hear. Visitors often describe the whispers as fragmented, disjointed, and difficult to interpret. Some hear snatches of conversation in languages long forgotten, commands issued during drills, or debates among officers about strategy. Others report more intimate sounds, confessions shared in hushed tones, laughter, or arguments among soldiers and civilians alike. One visitor described standing in the barracks late in the evening and hearing what sounded like two soldiers discussing the outcome of a skirmish. The words were faint and distorted, but the emotion behind them, the tension, the uncertainty, was unmistakable. The effect of these whispers is more than auditory. Many who experience them report a profound sense of presence, as though the voices are watching, guiding, or even warning. People have described feeling chills running down their spines, a weight on their shoulders, or a subtle pressure in the air, as if the walls themselves are leaning in to ensure they are listening. Some report sudden changes in temperature, a cool draft brushing past them with no visible source. The experience is unsettling yet compelling, a direct connection to the fort's layered past. One night, a historian who had been researching the fort's military records stayed alone to observe the whispers firsthand. He described sitting quietly in the chapel, notebook in hand, when he began to hear soft murmurs emanating from the stone walls. At first, he thought it was the wind or the settling of the building, but the whispers became distinct enough to recognize words. He recorded phrases about duty, loyalty, and loss, phrases that matched historical accounts he had been studying. The historian later stated that it was as if the walls were trying to tell him the stories of those who had lived, suffered, and died within them, preserving their voices long after they had passed. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the whispering walls using audio recording equipment, infrared sensors, and thermal cameras. Many nights, recordings capture indistinct murmurs, overlapping phrases, or sounds that resemble conversations, though no one is present to speak them. Occasionally, investigators report hearing clear statements, orders, names, or fragments of dialogue emerging from the stone. Despite extensive study, no definitive explanation has been found. Some speculate that the voices are a form of residual energy, an imprint of past events that remains embedded in the fort's walls, replaying itself when conditions are just right. Others consider it an auditory illusion, created by the acoustics of the thick stone and echoing corridors. Yet the consistency of experiences over decades defies a simple explanation. The whispers are not always uniform. They vary depending on location, time, and even the emotional state of the listener. The barracks often produce murmurs of tension and anxiety, recalling soldiers' struggles during long nights on guard duty. The chapel sometimes carries softer, more contemplative whispers, echoing prayers, confessions, or the quiet grief of those mourning comrades lost in battle. In some areas near the gates or walls, the whispers take on a more urgent tone, perhaps recalling moments of alarm, commands shouted during attacks, or the hurried footsteps of soldiers rushing to defend the fort. Some visitors have reported interactions with the whispers, claiming that when they remain silent and attentive, the voices become clearer. Others describe the experience as emotionally taxing, as though they are absorbing the fear, hope, and sorrow of centuries past. There are even stories of individuals who claim to have heard conversations that provide historical details later confirmed by research, lending an air of authenticity to the phenomenon. The whispering walls also seem to respond to groups differently than to solitary visitors. Groups of people often report the murmurs fading into indecipherable background noise, while those alone may hear the voices with remarkable clarity. This has led some to believe that the fort's spirits, or whatever causes the whispers, seek out individual attention, as if choosing to confide their secrets to those who approach with curiosity or reverence. Even skeptics find the experiences difficult to dismiss entirely. While some attribute the whispers to architectural acoustics or ambient noise, the emotional weight reported by visitors is undeniable. The walls seem to carry more than sound. They carry memory, history, and presence. The combination of auditory and physical sensations creates a hauntingly immersive experience, one that leaves visitors contemplating the lives that unfolded within the fort long after they have left. The whispering walls remain one of the fort's most enduring mysteries, a phenomenon that bridges the gap between history and the supernatural. They are a reminder that the past is never truly gone, that structures built and occupied by humans can carry echoes of thought, speech, and emotion. Those who hear the whispers find themselves momentarily connected to the lives of soldiers, prisoners, and caretakers who once walked the same halls. The effect is humbling and eerie, a subtle reminder that the fort is more than stone, and more to it is a vessel for memory, a keeper of secrets, and a place where the past continues to speak. For anyone standing alone in a dim corridor, listening intently, the whispering walls offer a rare glimpse into the voices of history. They remind us that even when life has moved on, echoes of the past can persist, resonating through time, space, and stone, waiting for someone willing to listen. The fort rises atop a bluff, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind and rain, standing as a sentinel over the surrounding land. By day, it is a quiet, historical site, filled with tourists, guides, and the occasional reenactor, all drawn to the stories of battles fought and lives sacrificed. But as dusk falls, a different presence makes itself known, one that cannot be explained by history books or visitor guides. Along the ramparts and battlements, a soldier in period uniform has been seen walking alone, moving with a deliberate, purposeful gait. He is young, fresh-faced, and entirely unaware of those who watch him, a soldier who never made it home from battle, and whose fate remains frozen in the shadows of the fort. The first sightings of the vanishing soldier date back decades, long before modern cameras and cell phones. Witnesses consistently describe the same figure, a man in uniform from the fort's active years, usually marching or pacing along the walls at twilight. He appears alert, focused, almost as if performing an inspection or following orders. Yet there is an unsettling quality to him. Despite his detailed uniform and the clarity of his features, he remains intangible. Those who approach report that he seems entirely unaware of their presence until, quite suddenly, he vanishes. One moment he is there, illuminated by the fading light, and the next, he disappears as if swallowed by the evening air. Many accounts suggest that the soldier is trapped in a moment of time, replaying the final hours of his life. During the fort's history, it was common for young men to be sent into battle with little experience. Standing on the walls as the first line of defense, some never returned. Among them, legend tells, was a soldier so dedicated that he could not leave his post, even in death. Visitors describe seeing him follow invisible paths along the ramparts, pausing occasionally as if responding to commands from officers long gone, only to continue his endless patrol. One widely reported encounter occurred during a sunset tour of the fort. A visitor, fascinated by the fort's history, noticed a young man in uniform walking along the northern wall. The figure appeared solid and real, the uniform crisp and detailed. The visitor called out, thinking it might be a reenactor who had lingered behind. The soldier paused, as if acknowledging the voice, but did not respond. When the visitor moved closer, the soldier vanished into thin air, leaving the stone wall completely empty. The observer reported feeling a strange mixture of awe and sorrow, as if witnessing a life caught between the living world and the afterlife. The vanishing soldier is not always aggressive or threatening, but his presence carries a profound sense of melancholy. Witnesses describe feeling the weight of his story, the unfulfilled duty, the loss of youth, the abrupt ending of a life that should have continued beyond the fort's walls. The soldier seems to embody the memories of all those who perished, defending the stronghold, a silent reminder of the cost of war and the devotion of those who served. Many who encounter him leave quietly, unwilling to disturb the figure, as if respecting the invisible line between life and death. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of the vanishing soldier with cameras, night vision devices, and motion sensors. While photographs sometimes reveal a faint, ghostly outline, video recordings often show only a blur, where witnesses insist a person had walked. Thermal imaging rarely registers heat, yet observers still see a figure in full uniform moving along the walls. Audio equipment occasionally picks up faint, unrecognizable sounds, boots tapping on stone or the rustle of fabric, but no human voice is detected. These findings reinforce the impression that the soldier is not part of the physical world, existing in a layer of reality that overlaps with the present but cannot be fully perceived. Eyewitnesses often note the precise details of his uniform and demeanor, which seem frozen in time. The buttons, hat, and coat reflect the period accurately, suggesting that the figure is more than a vague memory. Some describe the soldier as carrying a musket or other period-appropriate weapon, his stance disciplined, his movements precise. Others notice small personal details, a belt, a pouch, or the way he holds himself, that give the impression of a young man who is proud, dutiful, and unaware of the centuries that separate him from modern observers. The soldier's vanishing is sudden and consistent, a defining feature of the phenomenon. Approaching him too closely seems to trigger his disappearance, as though the presence of the living interrupts the fragile tether holding him in our world. Some speculate that the soldier exists in a loop, replaying the final moments of his life until someone witnesses them. Others suggest he is trapped by unresolved duty, unable to leave the walls until his orders, whatever they may have been, are fulfilled. The impact on those who witness him can be profound. Many describe feeling a deep sense of empathy, imagining the young soldier's fear, hope, and loyalty. Some are moved to reflect on the sacrifices made by soldiers throughout history, the unfinished stories, and the lives cut short. Others experience an eerie fascination, compelled to return to the fort repeatedly in hopes of catching another glimpse, of understanding the mysteries that cling so tightly to the ramparts. The vanishing soldier has become an enduring symbol of the fort itself, a reminder that history is not only recorded in stone and documents, but also lives on in the echoes of those who walked the walls, fought the battles, and never made it home. He is both haunting and honorable, a silent sentinel preserved in time, performing his eternal duty even as the world around him moves on. For those who stand on the ramparts at twilight, watching for a figure in uniform, the experience is both humbling and chilling, a fleeting encounter with a young soldier who never left his post and may never rest. The fort stands as a silent sentinel over the surrounding landscape, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and time. Within its ramparts, the old bell tower rises above the courtyard, a sturdy structure that has survived battles, storms, and the passage of countless generations. By day, visitors admire its architecture, imagining the way the bell once called soldiers to duty or signaled alarms during times of attack. But when evening falls and the air grows still, the bell takes on a life of its own. Time and again, visitors and caretakers alike have reported hearing it ring on its own, its deep, resonant toll echoing across the fort and surrounding plains. The sound is particularly frequent during the anniversary of the Goliad massacre, when over 300 Texian soldiers were executed in 1836, and many believe the bell tolls for the souls lost that fateful day. Accounts of the haunted bell span decades. Witnesses describe the sound as unmistakable, a slow, deliberate ringing, echoing with a melancholy that penetrates the very bones of those who hear it. Sometimes the bell tolls only once, a single somber note hanging in the night air. Other times, it rings repeatedly, each toll precise, as though marking the passage of time or honoring a solemn ritual. The ringing occurs regardless of weather, season, or human presence. Visitors have reported hearing it in the dead of summer, with no wind, in the quiet of winter, when the fort is empty, and even during storms when no one is near the bell tower. The origins of the phenomenon are steeped in history and tragedy. The Goliad massacre, a defining and sorrowful moment in Texas history, left a mark on the land and the hearts of all who survived. Those who died that day were young soldiers fighting for what they believed in, only to meet a sudden and brutal end. It is said that the bell, which had once been used to rally troops or signal danger, now tolls on its own to honor their sacrifice, a spectral reminder that the lives lost should never be forgotten. Some believe that the sound is not mechanical or accidental, but a message, a call from the past reverberating into the present. Visitors to the fort often describe a profound emotional reaction when they hear the bell ring. Some report a sudden chill, a drop in temperature that spreads through the courtyard as if the tolling carries with it the weight of centuries. Others feel an almost overwhelming sense of sorrow, as though the grief of the fallen soldiers has permeated the air, making every note of the bell heavy with meaning. Many describe a combination of awe and unease, a recognition that they are hearing something far beyond ordinary experience. One caretaker recounted an experience late one evening during the anniversary of the massacre. He was patrolling the grounds when the air grew unnaturally still, the usual sounds of wind and wildlife falling silent. Suddenly, the bell tolled, a deep, resonant note that seemed to shake the air itself. He ran toward the bell tower, expecting to find the rope moving on its own or some mischievous visitor. But the tower was empty. There was no one present, and the mechanism had not been disturbed. Yet the bell continued to ring, its sound steady and mournful. The caretaker later described feeling as if the souls of the soldiers themselves were reaching out through the sound, a direct connection to the tragedy of the past. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the bell's mysterious behavior, installing cameras, audio recorders, and sensors. On numerous occasions, recordings captured the bell ringing when no one was near, accompanied by no discernible mechanical explanation. Thermal imaging showed no human presence in the bell tower, and wind conditions were often negligible, ruling out natural causes. Audio recordings sometimes picked up faint whispers, almost imperceptible beneath the tolling, as if the bell were accompanied by voices from another time. Despite careful study, no conventional explanation has ever been confirmed. Leaving the bells haunting is one of the fort's most enduring mysteries. The bell's activity seems to intensify around the anniversary of the massacre. Witnesses report that on the night of March 27th, the air grows heavy, and the sound of the bell can be heard long before anyone sees it ring. Some visitors describe seeing an unusual glow near the tower, as though the bell is illuminated from within, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Others hear the tolling carrying across the plains, reaching distant areas where the fort's walls are no longer visible. The timing and consistency of these experiences reinforce the belief that the bell is linked directly to the memory of those who perished during the Goliad massacre. Some locals and historians offer a more spiritual interpretation, suggesting that the bell tolls not just as a memorial, but as a message from the beyond. The sound may be a warning, a reminder of the fragility of life and the cost of conflict. Others see it as a guide, leading restless spirits toward peace or drawing attention to the fort's history, so that the sacrifices made there are never forgotten. Regardless of the explanation, the tolling evokes a powerful connection between the living and the dead, between the fort's visitors and the soldiers whose lives were cut tragically short. Visitors often leave offerings near the bell tower, small gestures meant to honor the fallen or to show respect for the unexplained phenomena. Candles, coins, or quiet prayers are common, with some claiming that the bell tolls more clearly or lingers longer when such respect is shown. Others simply observe from a distance, feeling the emotional weight of the sound without attempting to interact, understanding that the bell's toll is a solemn reminder of history, sorrow, and the invisible presence of those lost long ago. The haunted bell continues to draw attention from curious tourists, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Its tolling reminds all who hear it that history is not only recorded in books or etched in stone, but also resonates through the air, echoing with emotion and memory. Each toll is a voice from the past, a haunting tribute to lives ended too soon and to the sacrifices made in defense of ideals, a sound that refuses to be silenced, even after centuries have passed. For anyone standing in the courtyard on the anniversary of the Goliad massacre, the haunting toll of the bell is more than a sound. It is a call to remember, a connection to those who cannot speak for themselves, and a chilling reminder that some echoes of the past are impossible to ignore. The fort sits atop a low hill, its weathered stone walls standing as a testament to centuries of history, conflict, and discipline. By day, it is a place of curiosity and learning, where visitors wander through barracks, powder magazines, and the chapel, imagining the lives of soldiers who once called the fort home. But as night falls and silence blankets the grounds, a different presence makes itself known. The faint sound of drums begins to echo through the fort. It is subtle at first, a distant thump that seems to come from nowhere, but it grows steadily, carrying the unmistakable rhythm of military drills performed long ago. Witnesses describe the phenomenon as both eerie and captivating. The drums are not loud or forceful, but persistent, resonating through the stone corridors and across the open courtyard. At first, many assume it is a modern visitor or a stray animal making noise, but the source is never visible. There are no footsteps accompanying the sound, no shadows moving across the walls, only the steady, measured beat of drums from an unseen band. The rhythm is precise, methodical, and disciplined, as though an invisible company of soldiers is conducting drills exactly as they did centuries ago. The origin of the faint drums is shrouded in history. The fort was a center of military activity for decades, hosting soldiers who trained rigorously, maintained watch, and prepared for conflict at all hours. Drums were an essential part of daily life, used to wake soldiers at dawn, signal meals, issue commands, and coordinate maneuvers during battle. It is said that the rhythm of these drums left a lasting imprint on the fort itself, echoing in the stone walls and courtyards long after the soldiers had departed. Some believe that on quiet nights, this energy manifests audibly, allowing modern visitors to hear the echoes of military life from centuries past. One commonly reported encounter involved a small group of visitors exploring the fort just after dusk. They had paused in the main courtyard when a low, rhythmic beat began to reach their ears. At first, it was so faint that they questioned whether they were imagining it. But as they listened, the beat became unmistakable, precise, organized, and unmistakably the cadence of soldiers marching in formation. The group spread out, looking for the source, but saw no one. As the sound grew louder, some felt chills running down their spines, a physical response to the auditory presence that seemed to belong to another time. Within minutes, the drums faded as suddenly as they had begun, leaving the courtyard in eerie silence once more. The experience is often accompanied by other sensory anomalies. Visitors report a noticeable drop in temperature, a whispering wind that seems to carry the sound, or the faint clatter of unseen boots on stone floors. Some describe feeling a sense of being watched, as though the spirits of the long-dead soldiers are observing their movements, ensuring that discipline and order are maintained even in death. Others experience an emotional response, a mix of awe, reverence, and melancholy prompted by the awareness of lives spent in service, dedication, and sacrifice. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of the faint drums using audio recorders, infrared cameras, and thermal imaging. Often, recordings pick up sounds that align with witness descriptions, low, rhythmic beats that follow a military cadence. Infrared cameras frequently reveal no human presence, and thermal sensors fail to detect any heat signature where the sound is strongest. The lack of a physical source strengthens the belief that the phenomenon is not merely an acoustic anomaly, a residual energy preserved in the fort itself. Local lore adds a layer of interpretation to the phenomenon. Many believe the drums are the spirits of soldiers who never left the fort behind, repeating their routines as though bound to the place where they once trained and served. Some claim the rhythm intensifies on the anniversaries of notable battles or skirmishes, suggesting that the fort's history is not only recorded in stone and documents, but also in echoes of sound that manifests under the right conditions. Visitors often describe the experience as more than auditory. It is temporal, a brief glimpse into the daily life of soldiers long gone. The faint drums also appear to follow a pattern. They are most frequently reported during calm nights, when external noises are minimal, and the atmosphere is quiet enough for subtle sounds to carry. Some witnesses suggest that the phenomenon occurs more strongly in the late evening or early hours of the morning, times when the fort would have been most active historically. The drums, precise and measured, often seem to move across the courtyard, fading at one end, only to reappear at the other, mimicking the formations and exercises of the soldiers who once marched these grounds. While skeptics argue that the sounds may be caused by wind, distant traffic, or echoes amplified by the fort's architecture, the consistency of the reports over decades is difficult to ignore. Those who experience the phenomenon often agree on its distinct military cadence, the emotional weight of the sound, and the uncanny precision with which it appears and disappears. Many leave the fort with a sense of having witnessed something extraordinary, a fleeting connection to a past that continues to resonate in the present. The faint drums are more than a ghostly curiosity. They are a reminder of the human presence that shaped the fort, the discipline and dedication of soldiers who lived and trained within its walls, and the lingering echoes of history that refuse to be silenced. Standing in the courtyard, listening to the rhythmic beat of an invisible drum, visitors are offered a rare bridge between centuries, a chance to feel the pulse of life as it once was, even when the faces and voices of those who created it have long faded into memory. The fort stands atop a gentle rise, its stone walls weathered and worn, bearing the marks of countless seasons and battles. By day, it is a quiet historical site, filled with the chatter of visitors, the scrape of footsteps on stone, and the occasional clang of reenactments. But as night falls and the sun sinks below the horizon, an entirely different presence awakens, one that is both elusive and chilling. From the shadows of the courtyard and along the ramparts, the unmistakable sound of hooves can sometimes be heard echoing through the fort. Visitors have reported these phantom sounds for decades, all clattering across the stone floors. Grows near and then fades without any horse ever appearing. The phenomenon, commonly known as the phantom horse, is thought to be the lingering spirit of a cavalryman who perished in battle. During the fort's active years, cavalry units were an essential part of defense and reconnaissance. Mounted soldiers rode tirelessly, patrolling the surrounding lands and standing ready to respond to threats. Some of these men died in sudden and violent skirmishes, and comrades who mourned their loss. Legend has it that the spirit of one such cavalryman remains tethered to the fort, eternally riding along the paths he once patrolled, his horse invisible to the living, his presence audible only through the sound of hooves. Witnesses often describe the experience with a mix of fear and fascination. The first sign is usually subtle, a distant tapping of hooves across the courtyard or the echoing clatter along the ramparts. At first, it is easy to dismiss as a trick of the wind, wildlife, or the acoustics of the fort's stone floors. But as the sound grows nearer, a sense of anticipation builds, a tension that seems to fill the air. The hooves strike the ground with rhythmic precision. Those who hear it instinctively pause, looking for the source, only to find nothing. No horses, no riders, no shadow, and no trace of disturbance. Just a sound lingering in the night air. One particularly vivid encounter was reported by a night guard who had been patrolling the fort alone. As he rounded the edge of the courtyard, he heard the rapid approach of hoofs behind him, accompanied by a faint whinny that seemed to come from every direction at once. The sound grew louder, echoing off the walls, yet when he spun around, the courtyard was empty. The echo of the hooves continued for several minutes, then faded suddenly, leaving the guard shaken and disoriented. He described feeling a weight in the air, a presence that was undeniably there, and an overwhelming sense of grief and duty emanating from the unseen rider. The phantom horse is not always solitary. Some accounts suggest the presence of other cavalry spirits accompanying the sound, forming an invisible unit performing patrols and drills in perfect formation. Visitors have described hearing multiple hoofbeats, synchronized and methodical, as if a spectral cavalry squad is riding in review along the fort's grounds. The effect is both mesmerizing and unsettling. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phenomenon, employing audio recorders, infrared cameras, and motion sensors. Many nights, recordings capture the distinct rhythm of hooves striking stone, while visual equipment registers nothing. Thermal imaging reveals no heat signature, yet the sound remains unmistakable. Some recordings even capture faint echoes that resemble commands or murmured words, as if the cavalryman is still issuing instructions while riding unseen. Skeptics attribute the sounds to animals, wind, or the fort's natural acoustics, but the consistency and clarity of eyewitness accounts over decades lend credence to the theory of a spectral presence. The phantom horse also appears to have a temporal pattern. It is most often heard after sunset, when the fort is quiet and human activity has dwindled. Some report hearing the sounds near the anniversary of significant battles, suggesting a connection to historical events. Others claim that the phenomenon is more likely during foggy nights or when the wind is still, as though the atmosphere allows the spirit to manifest more fully. In all cases, the hoofbeats are deliberate, rhythmic, and impossible to attribute to mere coincidence. Emotional responses to the phenomenon vary, but nearly every witness describes a deep impression of history and loss. The sound evokes the life of a cavalryman who trained, rode, and fought with dedication, only to meet an untimely death. A poignant reminder of the sacrifices made in defense of the fort and the ideals it represented. Visitors often feel a combination of awe and melancholy, sensing a story that cannot be fully told and a presence that cannot be touched. Some local lore suggests that the phantom horse is not malevolent. The spirit is believed to be bound by duty, performing eternal patrols, but it does not seek to harm. In fact, some claim that respectful acknowledgement of the phenomenon can result in the hooves lingering a little longer. Others argue that the spirit is a warning, a reminder of vigilance and courage, echoing through the night to remind the living of the bravery of those who came before. The sound of the phantom horse continues to intrigue historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and casual visitors alike. Each encounter is a fleeting window into the past, a connection to a time when soldiers rode the ramparts and the fort was alive with motion and purpose. The hoofbeats are more than a mystery, they are a living echo, a reminder of courage, loyalty, and the enduring presence of those who gave their lives in service. For anyone standing alone on a quiet night, listening to the distant rhythm of invisible hooves, the experience is both humbling and chilling. The phantom horse is a voice from the past, a shadow of history made audible, and a haunting testament to the lives and stories that linger in the stones of the fort long after their riders have gone. The fort sits atop a slight rise, its thick stone walls standing resolute against the passage of time. During the day, it is a place of quiet reflection, where visitors wander through the barracks, the chapel, and the ramparts, imagining the soldiers who once lived, trained, and fought within its walls. But as night falls, the fort transforms. A strange, dense fog often rolls in, obscuring the landscape and enveloping the fort in an almost tangible silence. This fog is not merely a natural occurrence. Locals and visitors alike have long whispered that it carries with it something far more mysterious. The spirits of fallen soldiers returning to the battlefield, their presence lingering in the mist. The fog can appear suddenly, as if drawn to the fort by unseen forces. One moment, the sky is clear, the moon shining down on stone and grass. The next, a thick gray veil creeps across the landscape, reducing visibility to mere feet. It winds through the courtyard, snakes along the ramparts, and seeps into the barracks, giving the fort a dreamlike and disorienting quality. Those caught within the fog often report a strange stillness, a weight in the air that presses upon the chest, accompanied by faint sounds that cannot easily be explained, soft whispers, distant clanging of weapons, or the muffled shuffle of marching feet. Many accounts suggest that the fog acts almost as a portal, bridging the past and present. Visitors report feeling watched, as though unseen eyes are tracking their movements. Shapes seem to form in the mist, indistinct figures moving in formation, shadows that dart behind corners, or a fleeting glimpse of a soldier standing silently at attention. Some claim to hear faint voices calling out orders, warning them, or reciting the names of fallen comrades. The experience is immersive and unsettling, making the fort feel alive in a way that is both eerie and poignant. One particularly striking encounter occurred on a late autumn evening. A lone visitor, exploring the fort after hours, noticed the fog rolling in faster than any ordinary weather pattern could account for. Within moments, visibility dropped, and the courtyard became a blur of gray. As the visitor moved cautiously along the ramparts, faint footsteps echoed in the mist. They were uneven at first, then gradually fell into a steady cadence, as if a patrol of soldiers were approaching. The visitor turned, heart pounding, only to find the mist thick and empty. The footsteps continued for several moments before fading into silence, leaving an overwhelming sense of absence and loss. Historical context adds weight to the fog's eerie reputation. The fort witnessed numerous battles, skirmishes, and sacrifices over the years. Soldiers fought and died within its walls and on the surrounding plains. The dense fog, appearing as if it is drawn to the echoes of conflict, seems to preserve the memory of these events. Locals believe that on nights when the fog is heaviest, the spirits of those who fell in defense of the fort return, retracing their steps, patrolling the walls, or gathering in the courtyard. The phenomenon is often strongest near significant anniversaries, particularly those linked to battles or massacres, suggesting that the fog may be more than a natural occurrence. It may be a conduit for the restless souls of the past. Visitors often report changes in temperature within the fog. A sudden chill is almost always present, no matter the season, accompanied by a dampness that clings to skin and clothing. Many describe the sensation as if unseen hands are brushing past them, or the atmosphere itself is pressing in, guiding them along invisible paths. The combination of auditory, visual, and physical sensations creates a multi-sensory experience that is difficult to ignore or dismiss. Those who encounter the fog rarely forget it, describing a profound sense of connection to the soldiers whose presence is said to linger within the mist. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of the phenomenon using thermal cameras, audio recorders, and night vision equipment. While the fog itself appears ordinary through visual equipment, audio recordings frequently capture faint, indistinct sounds, murmured orders, distant clanging of weapons, or the shuffle of footsteps that cannot be attributed to living individuals, suggesting the presence of entities invisible to the naked eye. Despite these attempts at documentation, the fog remains as mysterious as the soldiers it is said to carry, resisting explanation and leaving many researchers both intrigued and unsettled. The fog is also said to influence perception. Time seems to stretch within it, and distances appear distorted. A visitor walking through the courtyard may feel as if they are moving in slow motion, or that the fog is extending the space around them, creating a dreamlike, almost otherworldly environment. Shadows move differently in the mist, and familiar landmarks within the fort can suddenly seem unfamiliar. The fog acts as a filter between the living and the past, altering perception enough to make the spirits feel present and real. It can also evoke powerful emotional responses. Many visitors report a sense of sorrow, empathy, and respect, as if the mist carries the memories and grief of the fallen. The atmosphere encourages reflection, reminding those who experience it of the human cost of history. The sacrifices made by soldiers, it is haunting, but also reverential, a ghostly reminder of courage and loss. The mysterious fog remains one of the fort's most compelling phenomena, bridging the gap between past and present. Its appearance is unpredictable, its presence fleeting, yet unforgettable. For those standing within the swirling gray mist, listening to the faint echoes of footsteps, whispers, and distant commands, it is a chilling reminder that history is not only written in stone and recorded in books, it can be felt, heard, and experienced, lingering in the air as a reminder of the lives and stories that endure long after they have passed. The fort sits quietly on its hilltop, surrounded by the broad plains and the whispering wind that carries the echoes of centuries past. Its stone walls, weathered and scarred by time, enclose courtyards and barracks that were once filled with the daily routines of soldiers. By day, visitors wander through the grounds, reading plaques, exploring old rooms, and imagining the life of the fort in its heyday. But as night falls or the crowds thin, an unsettling mystery reveals itself in the sandy areas around the fort. Fresh footprints that appear without explanation, leading across the courtyard or along the walls, only to vanish mysteriously into nothing. These are known locally as the disappearing footprints, said to belong to a soldier who vanished without a trace, forever wandering the fort in spectral form. Witnesses first notice the phenomenon with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. One moment the sand is untouched, smooth, and undisturbed. The next it bears the clear impression of boots marching in formation. The prints are often distinct, showing laces, treads, and the size of a soldier's shoes, yet they never lead to a visible person. In some cases, the footprints appear to begin in the middle of the courtyard, as if the soldier materialized suddenly. And in other instances they trace the paths of old routines, winding between barracks, past the armory, or along the ramparts. What makes them truly eerie is the way the prints seem to end abruptly. One step leads to another, then, in the blink of an eye, they fade into the sand, as if swallowed by the earth or evaporated into the air. The story of the vanished soldier is deeply entwined with the fort's history. During its operational years, soldiers patrolled the walls, trained rigorously, and responded to the call of duty at all hours. Some were young men who died suddenly fallen in battle, stricken by disease, or lost during a patrol. Local legend suggests that one soldier, particularly diligent and dedicated, disappeared under mysterious circumstances, leaving no record of his death or burial. It is said that his spirit continues to roam the fort, appearing in the sand as footprints that trace his eternal journey, endlessly retracing the steps he once took in life. One account comes from a caretaker who arrived early one morning to inspect the grounds. As he walked through the courtyard, he noticed fresh footprints in the sand near the barracks. He followed them, curious to see where they might lead, only to find they ended abruptly, mid-step, with no sign of the soldier or any disturbance. The footprints were crisp, well-defined, and clearly formed by a heavy boot, yet the surrounding sand bore no indication of anyone entering or leaving the area. The caretaker described a strange chill in the air, as though the presence of the soldier had somehow lingered after the prints vanished. Visitors who stumble upon the disappearing footprints often experience a mix of awe and unease. Some have attempted to follow the trail, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious figure, only to find that the footprints dissolve before their eyes. Others report a feeling of being watched, a subtle pressure along their back, or the sense of eyes tracking their movement. Some say they can hear faint sounds accompanying the print's soft steps, the shuffle of boots on sand, or the occasional rustle of fabric, yet, when they turn, there is no one there. The footprints also appear at random times, sometimes during daylight, more frequently during quiet evenings or foggy mornings. Many witnesses report that the phenomenon is strongest on anniversaries of significant events in the fort's history, particularly battles or sudden losses. This has led some to speculate that the soldier's spirit is tied to specific moments of memory or trauma, replaying his last patrol endlessly, trying to complete duties left unfinished in life. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the disappearing footprints using cameras, infrared sensors, and even sand molds. On several occasions, time-lapse recordings captured impressions forming in the sand without any visible presence. Thermal cameras revealed no human heat signature, and attempts to recreate the phenomenon artificially failed to produce the same crisp, sudden disappearance. Audio equipment occasionally picked up faint sounds of marching, rustling fabric, or muted commands, as though the soldier was still performing drills in another plane of existence. These findings, while inconclusive, reinforce the idea that the footprints are not merely a trick of nature, but a lingering imprint of a life interrupted. Some visitors interpret the footprints as more than a haunting. They see them as a bridge between the living and the past. Each print represents a connection to the soldier's dedication, discipline, and loyalty. Standing at the end of a trail that fades to nothing, observers often feel a profound sense of history, sacrifice, and the continuity of memory. The footprints act as reminders that even in absence, the deeds, duties, and presence of individuals can leave lasting traces that transcend time. Local lore also suggests a spiritual lesson tied to the disappearing footprints. Respectful observers are said to notice that the prints linger slightly longer or form more distinctly. Many leave small tokens of acknowledgement, coins, flowers, or quiet prayers near the sand where the trail begins. Some even claim that the soldier's spirit responds to reverence, allowing his path to be witnessed more clearly, if only briefly, before vanishing once more. It is a silent, fleeting interaction that reinforces the connection between past and present, life and afterlife. The phenomenon continues to intrigue historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and casual visitors alike. The fort, once a bustling center of military activity, remains alive in subtle, haunting ways. The disappearing footprints remind all who encounter them that the past is never truly gone. Every impression in the sand is a story, a memory, a life that refuses to fade completely. For those walking through the courtyard at dusk, or inspecting the barracks in the early morning fog, the footprints are a tangible, yet fleeting link to a soldier who vanished without a trace, but continues to walk the fort eternally. For anyone who stumbles upon these mysterious prints, the experience is unforgettable. They are more than markings in the sand. They are echoes of duty, traces of a life suspended between worlds, and a haunting testament to the soldier whose journey continues, invisible yet enduring, across the grounds of the fort. The fort's museum is a quiet place, filled with relics, artifacts, and echoes of a long and tumultuous past. Visitors wander through dimly lit rooms, pausing to examine old uniforms, muskets, letters, and photographs. Among these historical treasures hangs a portrait that draws more attention than any other. It is the image of a stern-looking man, painted with meticulous care, his uniform crisp and his expression commanding. At first glance, he appears to be another figure from history, a soldier or officer who once served the fort, but those who linger often feel an unsettling awareness, tracking their every step with an intensity that is impossible to ignore. Reports of the haunted portrait have persisted for decades. Visitors describe a range of experiences, from subtle unease to outright fear. Some notice the eyes shifting imperceptibly when they glance away, only to find that when they look back, the gaze seems fixed upon them. Others report a feeling of being watched even when their back is turned, a sensation that grows stronger the longer they remain in the room. The effect is so consistent that many visitors approach the painting with caution. The identity of the man in the portrait is believed to be a commanding officer who served at the fort during its operational years. Historical records suggest he was a figure of discipline and authority, known for his strict enforcement of military protocol and his unwavering commitment to duty. Some accounts indicate that he met an untimely death, possibly under mysterious circumstances, and was buried nearby. Locals speculate that the intensity of his presence in life has carried over into the afterlife, leaving a lingering imprint in the form of the painting. It is said that his spirit has attached itself to the canvas, maintaining the vigilance he exhibited in life. Many encounters begin innocuously. Visitors might pause to examine the uniform, noting the details of medals and insignias, when a faint sense of unease creeps over them. The eyes of the portrait seem sharper, more focused, and some claim to catch a fleeting movement in the corners of the frame. A chill in the air often accompanies the experience, as if the man's presence extends beyond the confines of the painting. Some describe a feeling of tension in the room, a subtle pressure on the chest or shoulders, as though the officer is silently demanding respect or attention. One notable account comes from a historian conducting research late in the evening. While alone in the museum, she noticed the eyes of the portrait following her. As she moved from display to display, she paused to examine the painting more closely and felt a shiver run down her spine. In that instant, the eyes seemed to narrow slightly, conveying a mix of scrutiny and disapproval. When she stepped back, the expression reverted to its neutral, stern demeanor. Yet the sense of being watched lingered for hours after she left the room. She later described the experience as profoundly unnerving. The haunted portrait is not limited to visual phenomena alone. Subtle sounds that seem to emanate from the vicinity of the painting, faint whispers, barely discernible at first, have been described as commands, warnings, or murmured observations. Others report a sudden drop in temperature around the painting, a coldness that is localized and defies explanation. In several cases, people have claimed to feel the brush of a hand on their shoulder, or the sensation of breath on the back of their neck, further reinforcing the belief that the spirit within the portrait is actively observing and interacting with the living. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phenomenon using video cameras, infrared sensors, and electromagnetic field detectors. Many recordings capture a subtle distortion around the eyes, a flicker of movement that cannot be attributed to lighting or shadows. And EMF detectors sometimes register spikes consistent with reports of a presence. The consistency and intensity of witness experiences suggest a phenomenon that is difficult to dismiss. The effect of the portrait on those who view it is profound, offering respect or acknowledgement. Others report heightened alertness, a sense that they are being evaluated, and an instinct to move carefully and deliberately through the room. Children, in particular, are often the first to notice the unusual quality of the gaze, their reactions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. In some cases, visitors have returned multiple times, reporting that the intensity of the eyes varies depending on the time of day. The haunted portrait serves as a reminder that history is not merely contained in documents, artifacts, or stories. The painting is a link between the past and present, a conduit for the spirit of a man whose dedication, authority, and presence were so strong in life that they continue to resonate long after his death. Standing before the canvas, one cannot help but sense the weight of his watchful gaze, the echo of a life devoted to duty, and the mysterious persistence of a spirit unwilling to fade. For anyone who steps into the museum, the haunted portrait is is more than just an image on the wall. It is a presence, a silent observer, and a chilling reminder that some spirits linger in unexpected ways. The eyes may follow, the room may grow cold, and the sense of being watched may settle over every movement. But these experiences are also a direct connection to the past, a glimpse of a life, a personality, and a vigilance that transcends time itself. The fort has long been a place of discipline, vigilance, and the echoes of history. Its thick stone walls, watchtowers, and barracks tell stories of soldiers who lived, trained, and guarded its grounds, many of them leaving their mark on history through duty and sacrifice. But some marks are not written in documents or carved into stone. They are etched into the very air itself. Among the most persistent and unsettling of these phenomena is the presence known simply as the unseen sentry. Guards and visitors alike have reported hearing the unmistakable sound of someone approaching along the fort's corridors or pathways, only to turn and find no one there. Many believe this is the spirit of a sentry who never left his post, eternally patrolling the grounds he once vowed to protect. Encounters with the unseen sentry are often described as subtle at first, almost easily dismissed. A guard might hear the soft crunch of boots on gravel or the tap of a boot on stone floors during the quiet of night patrol. At first, the sound is distant, barely perceptible, but gradually it grows nearer, following a measured, deliberate rhythm. It is not the hurried pace of a visitor or an intruder. It is steady, disciplined, and purposeful, the unmistakable cadence of a trained soldier performing his duties. Yet, when the guard turns to investigate, the corridor or courtyard is empty, leaving behind only the lingering sound of movement that seems to vanish into thin air. Historical records provide a context that makes the phenomenon all the more eerie. The fort was manned by dedicated sentries, whose responsibility was to monitor the grounds, watch for approaching threats, and ensure the safety of all within the walls. The duties were rigorous, and failure could be met with harsh consequences. Some sentries lost their lives in the line of duty, whether during attacks, skirmishes, or accidents while performing routine patrols. Local lore suggests that one particular sentry, known for his unyielding discipline and unwavering attention to duty, died suddenly while on post. Since that time, his spirit has remained bound to the fort and to the patrols he once faithfully executed. Many guards have described a strange sensation that accompanies the footsteps of the unseen sentry. Even before the sound is audible, they report a feeling of being watched, a subtle pressure on the back or shoulders, as if someone is present just behind them. When the steps begin, the sensation intensifies, a combination of anticipation and unease that seems to fill the air. The footsteps move in perfect military cadence, sometimes passing right by the observer, circling the courtyard, or advancing along the walls, only to disappear when confronted directly. It is as though the sentry is aware of being observed, but continues his duty regardless, never breaking formation, never acknowledging the living. One widely reported experience occurred during a winter night, when a lone guard was making rounds along the fort's ramparts. He heard the slow, deliberate sound of boots behind him. The rhythm was unmistakable, someone marching with precision, taking measured steps that matched the fort's standard patrol pattern. The guard turned sharply, flashlight in hand, but the rampart was empty. He continued along the path, the footsteps mirroring his movements, advancing and retreating in a pattern he could not predict, leaving the guard shaken, with the lingering feeling of a presence that had observed him closely but refused to reveal itself. The unseen sentry is also reported to influence the environment in subtle ways. Some witnesses describe sudden chills that pass through corridors, doors that close softly on their own, or faint echoes of commands carried on the wind. The presence is often strongest in areas of the fort where sentries historically maintained watch along the walls, near gates, and around the main courtyard. At these locations, the footsteps are most audible, sometimes accompanied by a whisper of a command, a rustle of fabric, or the faint clatter of a musket being adjusted. While no one can see the sentry, the fort seems alive with his activity, a silent echo of duty from the past. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of the unseen sentry through video recordings, thermal imaging, and audio sensors. Many recordings capture the sound of boots striking stone or gravel with perfect cadence, yet no figure appears on video or in infrared imaging. Temperature readings often fluctuate dramatically near the source of the sounds, dropping suddenly and then returning to normal. Audio devices occasionally record muffled commands or indistinct whispers, suggesting that the sentry's presence is more than auditory, is a layered experience that affects both the senses and the psyche. The phenomenon seems to follow a pattern tied to the history of the fort. Footsteps are reported most frequently during the quiet hours of the night, when the fort is largely empty, and especially on anniversaries of battles or events where sentries were on high alert. Some guards believe that the sentry's presence is tied to moments of heightened vigilance or potential danger, perhaps replaying his duties endlessly in an invisible rehearsal of loyalty. The sense of history is palpable. Visitors and guards alike describe feeling as if they are witnessing a fragment of the fort's past. A soldier performing duties long after the human occupant has passed. The unseen sentry is not considered hostile. Though the experience can be unnerving, the presence is generally viewed as dutiful and impartial. It does not threaten or attack, but continues to perform its patrols with exacting precision, as though maintaining a sacred promise to protect the fort. Observers often feel a mixture of awe and respect, recognizing the discipline, devotion, and loyalty embodied by the spirit. The experience becomes a bridge to the past, connecting the living with the courage and sacrifice of those who came before. For those who hear the footsteps, the unseen sentry is more than a ghost story. It is a living echo of history, a reminder that duty and vigilance can transcend death. The rhythm of unseen boots along stone corridors and sandy courtyards is a haunting, yet solemn tribute to a soldier who never left his post, whose watch continues eternally. Standing in a fort at night, listening to the measured steps approaching and fading into silence, one cannot help but feel the presence of someone who remains forever alert, forever committed, and forever unseen. The fort stands perched on a gentle rise, its stone walls weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and history. During the day, it is a place of quiet exploration, filled with the low murmur of visitors, the soft clatter of footsteps on cobblestones, and the occasional laughter echoing from the courtyards. But as evening falls, a different presence awakens, one that cannot be explained by natural causes. In the tower that overlooks the entire fort, a lantern has been seen swinging, its light flickering in the darkness. Even on nights when the air is still and the weather calm, this phenomenon, known as the flickering lantern, has become a source of fascination, fear, and speculation for those who witness it. Many believe it is the light of a spirit, endlessly searching for a path, a way back to life, or perhaps the solace it never found in death. Accounts of the flickering lantern span decades. Witnesses often describe arriving at the tower at dusk or night and noticing a dim glow dancing in the upper windows. At first, it appears as a reflection or a trick of light, but as they approach, the movement becomes unmistakable. The lantern swings gently from side to side, casting long, wavering shadows along the walls of the tower and the surrounding courtyard. The effect is eerie, as though the light itself is alive, pulsing with purpose, yet unattached to any visible source. Many who have seen it report a sudden chill in the air, a sensation of being observed, and an uncanny feeling that the lantern is guiding them more, perhaps leading someone unseen along a path that no living person can follow. The origin of the lantern is tied to the history of the fort. During its active years, the tower served as both a lookout and a place of communication, where signals were sent to distant outposts and guards watched for approaching threats. Lanterns were essential, providing light during night patrols and signaling activity across the grounds. Local legend holds that one night, a young sentry or officer assigned to the tower died unexpectedly while performing his duties, whether through accident, illness, or misfortune. He never descended the steps alive. leaving the lantern he carried suspended and swinging above the tower long after his departure. The story suggests that his spirit remains tethered to the tower, continuing his vigil and guiding his lantern through the darkness, searching for his way home. Those who witness the lantern often describe a range of sensations, both visual and emotional. The light seems to flicker in response to movement, growing brighter or dimmer depending on the observer's position. Shadows shift unnaturally, elongating and bending as the lantern swings, creating the impression of forms moving just beyond the eye's reach. Some report hearing faint footsteps ascending the spiral stairs of the tower, a low scrape of metal or wood, or even the soft whisper of a voice calling out orders or seeking attention. The combination of these phenomena produces an experience that is both mesmerizing and unsettling, leaving a strong impression on anyone who watches the lantern for more than a few moments. One particularly vivid account comes from a night tour guide who was leading a small group through the tower. As they reached the midpoint of the spiral stairs, a lantern appeared in the upper window, swinging slowly, with its light cutting through the shadows of the tower walls. The group froze, watching as the lantern moved against the still night air. Despite the calm weather and closed windows, the lantern swung back and forth as if held by a hand. The guide described feeling a chill along the spine and a sudden awareness of an unseen presence observing them. The lantern remained suspended for several minutes before gradually fading, leaving the group in stunned silence, and a sense that they had witnessed something that was not entirely of this world. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of the flickering lantern using night vision cameras, long-exposure photography, and motion sensors. Recordings often show the lantern's light swinging and pulsating, yet infrared and thermal imaging reveal no heat source, and motion sensors detect no physical presence. Some audio devices pick up faint scraping sounds or murmured words, suggesting that the lantern's movements are accompanied by subtle auditory phenomena. Skeptics argue that reflections, drafts, or human imagination might explain the experience, but the consistency and long history of eyewitness accounts defy simple explanation. The lantern's appearance is often linked to particular times and conditions. It is most frequently reported at night, especially during quiet hours when the fort is empty, though some claim to have seen it during foggy evenings or when storms loom on the horizon. Certain dates in the fort's history, particularly anniversaries of battles or tragedies, are said to intensify the lantern's activity. Some witnesses have noted that if they acknowledge the lantern respectfully by pausing, remaining quiet, or speaking softly, seems to linger longer, as if permitting observation. Others report that sudden movements or loud noises cause the lantern to swing erratically or vanish completely, as though the spirit behind it is sensitive to the presence of the living. Emotional responses to the flickering lantern are varied but universally strong. Some describe awe, a sense of connection to the past, and a deep empathy for the life that once carried the light. Others feel fear, unease, and the chilling realization of an invisible observer bound to duty beyond death. The lantern is not aggressive, yet it commands attention, a silent testament to dedication, vigilance, and the lingering presence of those who once served the fort. The fort stands atop a hill, a silent witness to centuries of history. Its thick stone walls, watchtowers, and courtyards were once filled with the clamor of daily life, soldiers marching, orders shouted, and cannons firing in the distance. Even the wind and wildlife added their own soundtrack to the scene. But at certain times, the fort transforms in ways that cannot be explained by ordinary means. Birds stop singing, the wind ceases to stir the leaves, and even the faintest ambient noises vanish. Locals and visitors have long referred to this phenomenon as the eerie silence. A calm so absolute it feels almost tangible, as though the very fort itself is holding its breath. Those who experience the eerie silence often describe it as unsettling in a way that goes beyond the absence of sound. Time seems to stretch, moments dragging as if the world has slowed. Every movement feels amplified. The soft scuff of a shoe against stone, the creak of a wooden bean butt, the surrounding air remains utterly still. Witnesses report an immediate sense of awareness, a tingling on the skin, and the uncanny feeling that they are being observed by something unseen. The silence feels purposeful, as though the fort itself is preparing its occupants for an encounter with the supernatural. Many who have experienced it describe the sensation as both heavy and electric, a pause in the natural order that heralds something otherworldly. Historical context lends weight to these experiences. The fort was not only a military stronghold, but also a site of conflict, vigilance, and, occasionally, tragedy. Soldiers patrolled its walls, guards kept watch through long nights, and many who died within its bounds left their mark, intentionally or not. Some passed in battle, others from accidents, and still others due to illness or exhaustion. According to local legend, the eerie silence occurs when the energy of these past events gathers in the air, concentrating in specific areas of the fort before manifesting in more visible or audible paranormal activity. It is as though the fort itself remembers, pause in the living world to allow the spirits of the past to make themselves felt. Visitors report that the eerie silence often precedes other supernatural phenomena. Footsteps echo along empty corridors. The faint swing of a lantern appears in a darkened tower, or soft whispers seem to drift through the stone walls. One guard recounted walking through the main courtyard late at night when every sound abruptly ceased. The usual rustle of the wind and distant calls of nocturnal birds vanished completely. In that moment, he felt a profound pressure in the air and noticed shadows flickering unnaturally along the walls. As he reached the barracks, the silence lifted, replaced by the faint sound of disembodied footsteps retreating into the darkness. Others have experienced similar premonitions. Tourists exploring the chapel reported a sudden hush, during which even the creaking pews and shifting stones seemed muted. Within the stillness, they could hear something faintly a whisper, a soft thud, or a distant murmur, but the origin remained untraceable. The quiet intensified their awareness, creating a heightened sensitivity to every subtle shift in the air, every movement of shadow and light. Many leave the fort with the memory of that silence lingering, a haunting sensation that is difficult to describe, yet impossible to forget. Paranormal investigators have attempted to study the phenomenon with modern technology. Audio recorders often capture nothing during the silence, while EMF sensors sometimes register spikes, suggesting unseen energy. Thermal cameras occasionally detect sudden cold spots in areas where silence is reported, adding to the mystery. Yet, despite technological attempts, the eerie silence remains largely inexplicable. Its consistency over time, coupled with the shared experiences of countless witnesses, lends credibility to the idea that it is more than coincidence, more than an absence of natural sound. Psychologically, the silence has a profound effect. Many describe a sensation of heightened alertness, a visceral awareness that something is near, even if it cannot be seen. The stillness forces focus, drawing attention to details that might otherwise go unnoticed: the shift of a shadow, the smell of damp stone, or the faint vibration of footsteps. It creates an intimate connection between the present and the past, allowing the living to sense the weight of history in a way that is both thrilling and unsettling. The eerie silence is not threatening, but it is commanding. It is a reminder that the fort is more than stone and mortar. It is a vessel for memory, energy, and lingering presence. Those who experience it often pause, listening carefully, aware that the quiet itself carries meaning. In that silence, the past whispers, and the fort stands not merely as a relic, but as a living archive of the lives, struggles, and spirits it has housed. The fort stands as a sentinel over the surrounding plains, its stone walls bearing witness to centuries of history, battle, and human endeavor. By day, it hums with the sounds of visitors exploring its halls, reading plaques, and imagining the lives of soldiers, sentries, and officers who once walked its corridors. But when night falls, a different kind of presence awakens within its walls. From the chapel, a soft and haunting melody drifts through the air, delicate and ethereal, yet unmistakably real. Known as the mysterious music, it has been reported by countless witnesses over the years. Many believe it is the music of a long-dead musician, still playing for an audience that cannot be seen. A spirit bound to the chapel by devotion, memory, or unfulfilled duty. The first accounts of the mysterious music date back decades, though locals insist it may have been present for far longer. Visitors and staff alike describe the experience as both beautiful and unsettling. At first, it may be barely audible, a faint piano or stringed instrument echoing through the stone corridors. The music grows clearer with time, filling the chapel with a soft, haunting resonance that seems to vibrate through the walls and floor. It is a melody that seems alive, moving independently of the natural environment, unhindered by drafts or structural acoustics. Many who hear it describe an emotional response that is profound, both melancholy and comforting, a reminder of lives long past and the lingering presence of the fort's history. Witnesses often describe the music as emanating from the altar or the choir loft, yet when they investigate, the source remains unseen. Instruments, if present, lie untouched, and no living musician is found. Sometimes the music seems to shift in tone or tempo, rising and falling as though responding to unseen emotions or the movements of those who listen. One evening, a caretaker reported walking into the chapel to close the doors when a soft violin melody began to play. He froze, certain someone was performing, but the pews were empty, the altar silent, and the loft bare. The notes drifted around him, lingering in the air for several minutes before fading as abruptly as they had begun, leaving only silence and a lingering sense of awe. Historical records offer a potential origin for the music. During the fort's operational years, chapels were often the center of both spiritual and cultural life. Musicians played for religious services, military ceremonies, and special occasions, performing for soldiers, officers, and local residents. Some of these musicians were known for their dedication, practicing late into the night to perfect a piece or to honor a fallen comrade. Legend holds that one particularly skilled musician died unexpectedly, leaving unfinished compositions behind. It is said that his spirit remained in the chapel, compelled to continue playing, offering the melodies he could not finish in life to an audience that can neither applaud nor interrupt. The phenomenon is not only auditory. Many who encounter the music report a range of accompanying sensations. The air often grows cooler, carrying a subtle chill that seems to circle around the chapel. Shadows shift unexpectedly, flickering across the walls as if reacting to the rhythm of the notes. Some visitors feel a gentle pressure, almost like the brush of a hand on their shoulder, or a sense of presence at their side, watching as the music continues. The experience can be both comforting and eerie, a reminder that the fort is a place where the living and the dead coexist in subtle, perceptible ways. One evening, a group of history students was exploring the chapel after hours. As they approached the altar, a faint organ melody began to play. The sound was soft at first, barely distinguishable, but grew richer, more textured, filling the high vaulted space with layers of sound. The students looked around, startled, but there was no one present. One of them ventured to the organ, only to find the keys still and untouched. The music continued, ebbing and flowing, until it slowly faded, leaving the students with an impression of being in the presence of someone, or something that had not yet moved on from the world of the living. Paranormal investigators have tried to document the mysterious music using audio recorders, cameras, and electromagnetic field detectors. Many audio recordings capture the ethereal notes with clarity, yet no corresponding visual source is found. Thermal imaging often shows nothing unusual, though EMF spikes sometimes occur, suggesting an unseen energy moving through the space. Some investigators speculate that the music is a form of residual haunting, a playback of a spirit's final emotions, frozen in time, while others believe the musician's consciousness remains active, intentionally sharing the melodies for those who enter the chapel at night. The music is often reported to be most pronounced during certain times, nights of storms, anniversaries of battles, or quiet evenings when few visitors are present. Its unpredictability adds to its mystery. Sometimes it begins as a single, sustained note. Other times it is a complex arrangement, full of harmony and nuance. Listeners often feel compelled to remain, allowing the melody to unfold, and many leave with a heightened awareness of the fort's history and the lives it sheltered. Emotional responses to the music are powerful. Some describe it as profoundly sad, evoking the weight of lives lost and the relentless passage of time. Others find it soothing, almost protective, as if the musician's spirit intends to offer comfort to the living. Children have been reported to pause in the pews, listening in rapt attention, sensing something that adults might only rationalize as imagination. In every account, the music creates a bridge between past and present, a tangible connection to a person who existed long ago, yet continues to touch the world in the present. The mysterious music serves as a reminder that history is not only recorded in documents, artifacts, or stone, it is felt. The melodies drifting through the chapel connect the living to the past, honoring lives that remain etched in memory. It is a haunting, beautiful, and inexplicable phenomenon, one that leaves visitors with the sense that the fort is alive with stories, presence, and devotion that transcend death. Those who hear the music understand that the fort holds more than relics and ruins. It holds the essence of the people who lived, worked, and sometimes died there, their passions and talents echoing eternally through the walls. The fort stands as a silent witness to centuries of history, its stone walls weathered by time and battle. By day, it is a place of exploration, filled with the clatter of footsteps on cobblestones, the murmur of visitors reading plaques, and the occasional breeze rustling through the courtyards. But when night falls, the fort transforms into something far less ordinary. On certain evenings, the distant echo of cannon fire ripples through the air, startling visitors and staff alike. Known as the phantom cannon, this phenomenon has been reported for decades, its origins shrouded in history, legend, and the lingering energy of battles long past. Some believe these ghostly volleys are the echoes of soldiers' courage, fear, and sacrifice, repeating eternally across the fort's grounds. Witnesses describe the sound of the phantom cannon as startlingly real. It is not a soft boom or a faint echo. It is the full, thunderous report of heavy artillery reverberating through the courtyards, walls, and towers. Those nearby often feel the vibration in their chest and a sudden rush of wind, as if the gunpowder charge has just detonated. Yet when the sound fades, no smoke, no flash, and no cannon are found. Attempts to locate a source yield only empty courtyards and silent ramparts. The experience leaves many with a profound sense of awe and unease, a visceral connection to the fort's violent and turbulent past. Historical records provide context that makes the phenomenon even more chilling. The fort was a strategic stronghold, witnessing numerous skirmishes and battles. Cannons were an essential part of its defense, mounted on the ramparts and fired during drills, warnings, and actual combat. Soldiers trained tirelessly with the artillery, learning to aim, load, and fire with precision. Many lost their lives in battle, some under enemy fire, others during accidents while operating the heavy cannons. The phantom cannon is believed to be the residual energy of these moments, the echo of gunpowder, tension, and valor lingering in the air long after the actual events have passed. Accounts of the phantom cannon are varied but consistently unsettling. One night, a lone guard patrolling the upper walls heard the unmistakable roar of a cannon discharge. The sound shook the ground beneath him and rattled the windows of the barracks. He froze, heart racing, expecting to see the enemy or an accidental discharge of a weapon. But no one was there. The courtyard was empty, the cannons long decommissioned, and yet the echo of battle hung in the still night air. The guard later described the experience as an encounter with history itself, a moment where the past reached out and demanded acknowledgement. Other visitors report similar experiences. A family touring the fort at dusk heard multiple cannon reports, spaced in the rhythm of a traditional volley. Their echoes seemed to bounce from the stone walls, surrounding the group with the sound of battle. Despite running to investigate, they found only empty courtyards and darkened ramparts. Some describe the sensation of being watched, as if unseen soldiers lingered nearby, their presence entwined with the phantom sound of artillery. Children in the group clutched their parents' hands, captivated and frightened by the dissonance of an ancient war replaying in silence. Paranormal investigators have studied the phantom cannon extensively, employing audio recording equipment, electromagnetic field sensors, and thermal cameras. Audio devices frequently capture the deep, rolling boom of cannon fire in isolated areas, even when no wind or human activity is present. EMF detectors sometimes register spikes concurrent with the sound, hinting at a concentration of unexplained energy. Thermal imaging shows no heat source, and visual cameras capture nothing but empty courtyards. Skeptics suggest atmospheric acoustics or auditory illusions, yet the repeated accounts, coupled with the physical sensations of vibration and pressure, make it difficult to dismiss entirely. The sound of the phantom cannon is often linked to specific conditions. It is most commonly reported during nights when the air is still and the fort is quiet, the absence of wind and wildlife accentuating the effect. Stormy or foggy nights sometimes intensify the phenomenon, lending a surreal quality to the echoes. Local lore even ties the cannon fire to anniversaries of battles or dates when the fort's artillery was historically active, suggesting that the past may be more aware of the present than conventional understanding allows. Psychologically, the phenomenon has a profound effect on witnesses. Many report a sudden rush of adrenaline, fear, and awe, often accompanied by the sense of standing in the midst of history. The booming echoes seem to awaken the memory of those who once manned the cannons, reminding the living of the sacrifices made to protect the fort. Some describe feeling invisible pressure on their shoulders or the distant scent of gunpowder, as though the experience engages not only hearing but multiple senses simultaneously. For many, it is an encounter with history in its rawest, most elemental form. The phantom cannon, though unsettling, is not considered malevolent. It does not cause harm, but it commands attention, demanding recognition of the lives, battles, and history it represents. Observers often feel compelled to pause, reflect, and acknowledge the presence of something greater than themselves, a force rooted in memory, valor, and tragedy. In this sense, the cannon is a messenger from the past, a sonic monument to courage and the weight of duty. For anyone standing on the fort's ramparts during one of these unexplained volleys, the experience is unforgettable. The echo of cannon fire reverberates through the stone walls, vibrating through the chest, and resonating with the pulse of history itself. It is a reminder that the fort is more than a collection of walls and artifacts. It is a living archive of human experience, a place where echoes of the past persist in ways both audible and ineffable. The phantom cannon is a testament to that enduring presence, a haunting yet reverent connection to the bravery, sacrifice, and history that continue to reverberate through time. The fort sits atop a windswept hill, its stone walls steeped in centuries of history and stories, both heroic and tragic. Among its many features, one structure has earned a reputation that surpasses all others: the fort's old well. Tucked into a shadowed corner of the courtyard, the well appears unremarkable at first glance, a simple stone cylinder descending into darkness. But those who approach it speak of a chilling presence, an unshakable sense of dread, and visions that defy explanation. Known as the Haunted Well, it has become one of the fort's most infamous sights, drawing both the curious and the brave, each hoping to understand the mysteries that lie beneath its surface. The haunted well is said to be cursed, though the origins of that curse are shrouded in the fort's long and tumultuous history. Some legends claim that during the fort's operational years, a soldier accused of treachery was executed near the well, his body discarded into its depths. Others speak of prisoners or civilians who met tragic ends, their spirits unable to leave the place where life slipped away. Over time, the well became more than a source of water. It became a repository of sorrow, fear, and unfinished stories. Those who peer into its shadowed depths often report a sensation that the darkness is alive, watching, or even breathing, as though the well itself possesses awareness and will. Some feel a sudden, bone-deep chill, as though invisible hands brush against their shoulders, or windless cold seeps from the stones. Others report hearing faint whispers, unintelligible at first, but growing clearer as one leans closer. A common account is the sudden onset of vertigo or nausea, a disorienting feeling as if the darkness inside the well is pulling at the mind itself. Many visitors describe fleeting visions when gazing into the water or the shadowed depths faces of soldiers, flickering candlelight, or shadowy figures moving just beyond perception. These images vanish instantly when attention shifts, leaving only the echo of their presence and a lingering unease. One particularly chilling account comes from a night tour guide who had been leading a small group through the fort. As they approached the well, a sudden oppressive silence fell over the courtyard. Even the wind, insects, and distant wildlife seemed to vanish. When the group peered into the well, each reported seeing a different vision. Some glimpsed a soldier's uniformed figure staring upward, others saw hands reaching for them, and one visitor swore she saw her own reflection, distorted, as if twisted by some unseen force. The experience lasted only moments, but the impact lingered long after, leaving each person shaken and unsettled. The well's notoriety has also drawn paranormal investigators. They report strange readings in the immediate vicinities, spikes in electromagnetic fields, sudden drops in temperature, and subtle vibrations that suggest movement deep within the well. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint murmurs or distant cries that cannot be traced to any human source, adding to the sense of mystery and fear surrounding the site. Visitors often describe the haunted well as having a psychological effect beyond fear. It is as if the well acts as a mirror to the mind, reflecting anxieties, memories, or unacknowledged emotions. Those who stare too long into its darkness sometimes report intrusive thoughts or vivid memories that seem unrelated to their own lives. The well seems to draw out something hidden within, amplifying both curiosity and dread. For many, the experience is transformative, leaving a permanent impression of the fort's haunted history and the invisible lives that linger within it. Some speak of visitors who leaned too far and suddenly felt themselves yanked back by an unseen force. Others tell of people who dropped coins into the well, only to hear them clatter endlessly, as though bouncing across some spectral surface far below. There are stories of shadowy figures peering from the rim when no one is present, and of whispers warning or pleading, impossible to fully interpret. Each tale adds layers to the mystery, making the well a focal point for both fear and fascination. Despite tour, perhaps because of its notoriety, the haunted well draws people from across the region. Some come seeking a thrill, others hoping to witness the supernatural firsthand. Many leave with more questions than answers, but almost all agree on one point. The well is not ordinary. It exudes an energy that is palpable, a dark presence that is ancient, intelligent, and unyielding. It is not merely a hole in the ground. It is a threshold, a portal between the world of the living and the remnants of lives ended too soon, memories trapped, and spirits unable to move on. The fort itself seems aware of the well's power. Guides often warn visitors to approach with caution, to respect the darkness rather than challenge it. The well's stones are worn smooth, evidence of centuries of human curiosity and approach. Yet the darkness at the bottom remains impenetrable. It resists understanding, defies explanation, and continues to evoke fear, awe, and fascination in equal measure. Standing at the rim of the haunted well, one feels the weight of history and the presence of something unseen. The darkness calls, inviting, mysterious, and terrifying all at once. It is a reminder that the fort is more than stone and mortar. It is a vessel of memory, emotion, and unresolved energy. Those who dare to peer into the well may glimpse the past, feel the weight of countless lives, and come face to face with the lingering presence of those who never left. The haunted well is not just a feature of the fort, it is a guardian of its darkest secrets, an eternal witness to sorrow, and a portal that connects the present to the unseen world below. The fort has stood for centuries, a silent sentinel over rolling hills and winding paths. Its thick stone walls, towers, and courtyards were once alive with the clamor of soldiers, officers, and the occasional families who lived within or near its confines. Over time, however, many of the fort's residents passed away. leaving behind memories, echoes, and, according to legend, spirits that linger long after life has ended. Among the most haunting of these apparitions is the unseen child, whose laughter and pitter-patter of tiny feet are reported by visitors and staff alike. Yet no living child is ever found within the fort's corridors. The phenomenon is as unsettling as it is mysterious. Those who encounter it often describe sudden, inexplicable sounds of place-off giggles, murmurs of curiosity, and the unmistakable thump of small feet running across stone floors or wooden staircases. The sounds sometimes follow visitors from one room to another, bouncing off walls and stairways, then fading as quickly as they appeared. Some witnesses report hearing the distinct squeak of a door opening or closing, the shuffle of small hands, and even faint whispers calling their names. The effect is disorienting, leaving listeners convinced that a child is present, only to find the halls entirely empty. Historical accounts provide a chilling context for the unseen child, and children lived within the walls alongside the adults. Disease, accidents, and the hardships of life at the fort claimed the lives of many young ones prematurely. Some legends suggest that one particular child, perhaps a soldier's son or daughter of an officer, died tragically and unexpectedly in the fort's corridors, unable to leave the place where they spent their final days. The child's spirit is said to continue wandering, replaying fragments of life that were cut short, laughing, running, and exploring, as if frozen in a moment of innocence. Visitors often describe an emotional duality when hearing the unseen child. The sounds are sometimes joyful, evoking the innocence and lightness of youth, yet they are accompanied by a subtle undertone of melancholy or unease. The laughter seems almost too perfect, too hollow, echoing unnaturally through the stone corridors. The pitter-patter of tiny feet can startle even the most seasoned visitor, as the sensation of a presence, so close yet invisible, triggers a primal awareness that something is not entirely ordinary. Some describe an almost tactile sensation, as if a small hand brushes past them, or the air around their ankles seems to stir with movement. One particularly vivid encounter occurred during a late evening tour. A caretaker was walking through the long, narrow corridor connecting the barracks when she heard the unmistakable giggle of a child. At first, she assumed a visitor or staff member was playing a prank, but the halls were empty, and the echo of her own footsteps contradicted any living presence. She heard the patter of small feet running toward a corner, then abruptly stopping. A fleeting sense of being watched swept over her. She turned slowly, expecting to see something, yet the corridor remained empty. The laughter faded, leaving only the oppressive quiet of the fort, thicker than any ordinary silence. Other visitors report similar phenomena. Children's voices are heard calling from the stairwell or the upper floors of the barracks. The sound of toys being dropped or rolling across the stone floor is reported, even when no objects are present. Doors open and close without explanation. Shadows seem to shift as though moving to avoid being caught, and the occasional fleeting glimpse of a small figure at the edge of vision reinforces the sense that the fort is not entirely empty. Some witnesses attempt to follow the sounds, but the child remains elusive, always just beyond reach. Paranormal investigators have studied these occurrences with mixed results. Audio devices sometimes capture faint giggling or the echo of tiny footsteps, but attempts to record visual evidence are rarely successful. Electromagnetic field readings occasionally spike in areas associated with the unseen child, while temperature drops and localized cold spots coincide with the most active times. Some theorize that the child's presence is a residual haunting, a replay of life frozen in memory. Others suggest that the child is consciously aware, interacting with the living in ways that are both subtle and profound. Psychologically, the unseen child elicits a unique response. Adults often feel a mixture of nostalgia, sorrow, and unease. Some are reminded of their own childhoods, while others experience the protective instincts that arise when a child is sensed nearby. The juxtaposition of joy and melancholy creates an emotional intensity that is difficult to describe. Witnesses frequently report a heightened awareness of their surroundings, a sense that the past is pressing against the present, and an understanding that the fort is more than stone, and history it is a vessel for lingering memories and lives left unfinished. Over time, the legend of the unseen child has become part of the fort's cultural identity. Guides share the story with visitors, often advising them to tread softly near areas where the child's presence is strongest. Courtyards, stairwells, and long hallways are noted as particularly active, though some visitors enter skeptically. Most leave with an altered perception of the fort, an awareness that the walls they walk past have witnessed joy, fear, play, and loss, and that some of those who lived here are not gone. The unseen child is not malevolent. There is no threat, only presence. The laughter and footsteps are reminders of life, innocence, and the fragility of existence. Yet they are also a haunting, subtle echo that bridges the gap between the living and the dead. For those who encounter the phenomenon, the experience is unforgettably fleeting glimpse into the continuity of history and the spirits that linger. Unseen yet undeniably real, the fort stands as a monument to history, its walls weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and sun. From its towers, one can see miles of rolling hills, once the scene of battles, drills, and the daily routines of soldiers stationed within. Among its many enduring features, the flagpole is perhaps the most symbolic, a marker of pride, duty, and national identity. Yet at certain times, visitors and staff report a phenomenon that defies explanation: the phantom flag. Even when the air is perfectly still, the flag is seen to wave and ripple, as if stirred by an invisible breeze. Many believe this unusual display is the work of spirit soldiers who never left the fort in life, still honoring their country in death. Accounts of the phantom flag have circulated for decades. Visitors often describe approaching the fort on quiet mornings or evenings, only to see it snap and sway with a force that seems impossible. The movement is subtle at first, a flicker or a slight undulation along the edge of the cloth, but it can intensify, billowing dramatically, as though caught in a sudden gust. Observers frequently note a sense of electricity in the air, a tension that makes the hairs on the back of their neck stand on end. Some report hearing faint echoes of commands, marching footsteps, or the clatter of musketry, coinciding with the flag's motion, as if the spirits of soldiers are simultaneously conducting drills in the past while honoring the present. Historical context helps explain why such a phenomenon would become attached to the fort's flag. Soldiers stationed at the fort were trained to show absolute respect for their colors, raising and lowering the flag, ensuring it never touched the ground, and saluting it were daily rituals imbued with discipline and devotion. Many soldiers who served at the fort died in service, whether from battle, disease, or accidents. Local legend holds that the phantom flag manifests when the spirits of these soldiers rise to continue their duties, patrolling invisible corridors and ensuring that the honor of their regiment remains intact. The flag becomes a conduit for memory, reverence, and the lingering presence of those who never left. Witnesses often describe the experience in visceral detail. One evening, a historian visiting the fort noticed that the air was unusually still. The nearby trees did not sway, and the surface of the fort's courtyard pools remained glassy. Yet the flag atop the central tower began to flutter, first with small ripples, then with pronounced waves that caught the fading light. The historian later recounted a sense of awe and unease, noting that the movement of the flag seemed to pulse in rhythm with the echoes of distant footsteps, as if the soldiers themselves were walking the perimeter in formation. The effect was so striking that several nearby visitors stopped to watch, all convinced they were witnessing something beyond natural explanation. Others report that the phantom flag sometimes behaves differently depending on who observes it. Children describe it as dancing in the air, playful and bright, while adults often experience a deeper, more somber sensation, a reminder of duty, sacrifice, and the lives lost in service to the country, only to snap to life with a sudden wave when no one else is looking, as if acknowledging an unseen witness. These subtle interactions add to the fort's air of mystery and reinforce the idea that the phenomenon is not random, but intentional, the work of spirits aware of their audience. Paranormal investigators have sought to document the phantom flag with cameras, wind sensors, and other equipment. Meteorological readings often confirm calm conditions, with no measurable wind to account for the movement. Video recordings occasionally captured the flag, rippling against a completely still sky, while sensors detect unexplained fluctuations in electromagnetic fields near the flagpole. Though skeptics propose that subtle drafts or thermal currents might cause such effects, the consistency of reports, the accompanying sensations, and the emotional impact on witnesses suggest something more profound. For many, the phantom flag is a bridge between the living and the dead, a reminder that history is not confined to books and plaques, but continues to resonate in unexpected ways. The phenomenon is often accompanied by a feeling of presence. Visitors report sudden chills, a sense of being observed, or even the faint echo of marching commands. Some say they can hear a distant bugle call, or the soft rustle of boots on stone, perfectly synchronized with the flag's movement. The combination of auditory and visual cues creates an immersive experience, one that makes it difficult to ignore or dismiss. Those who witness the phantom flag often describe leaving the fort with a heightened awareness of its history, a profound respect for the soldiers who served there, and a lingering sense of connection to the past. The phantom flag is not threatening. It does not harm or intimidate, but it commands attention and respect. It is a subtle reminder that the fort is more than stone and mortar. It is a living repository of memory, devotion, and sacrifice. The flag's ghostly motion honors those who cannot raise it themselves, offering a tangible symbol of their continued presence. Visitors often find themselves pausing, watching the ripples of cloth against the sky, feeling the weight of centuries of service and the dedication of soldiers who remain eternally vigilant. In the end, the phantom flag is a phenomenon that blends history, mystery, and the supernatural into a single, unforgettable experience. It reminds all who see it that the fort is not merely a relic of the past, but a space where the echoes of duty, honor, and devotion continue to manifest. The flag waves as if alive, animated by invisible hands, carrying the spirits of soldiers who never left, forever honoring their country, and ensuring that the legacy of their service remains visible to those who are willing to look. The barracks of the fort have stood for centuries, long after the soldiers who once slept within them have gone. Rows of wooden bunks line the walls, narrow aisles separating each bed, with the faint smell of aged wood and stone permeating the air. By day, the barracks are a quiet museum of military life, filled with artifacts, uniforms, and the echoes of long-forgotten drills. But at night, the atmosphere changes. Many visitors and staff have reported that the barracks are the most haunted area of the fort, where the past refuses to remain buried. Beds shake, doors creak, whispers echo, and the unseen presence of soldiers seems to linger in every corner. Reports of activity in the barracks are varied, but several themes emerge consistently. One of the most common experiences is the sudden shaking or movement of beds. Witnesses describe feeling a vibration along the floorboards, as though someone has just shifted in a bunk or stood at the foot of the bed. At times, blankets appear to move on their own, as if a soldier is tossing and turning in restless slumber. The sensation can be startling, especially when no living person is present. Some visitors have even claimed to see the faint outline of a figure sitting or standing by a bunk, only to vanish when they blink or turn to get a better look. Whispers and murmurs are another frequent occurrence. People walking through the barracks late at night often hear soft conversations, as though soldiers are talking quietly to one another. The words are usually indistinct, muffled by time, but occasionally a phrase or command is understood. A guide recalled hearing someone call out an order to stand guard even though no one was on duty. Another visitor reported hearing the familiar cadence of a soldier reciting the day's schedule, as though the routine of the past was replaying itself for anyone willing to listen. These auditory experiences often leave visitors with an eerie sense of being observed, as if the soldier's presence has not yet relinquished its claim on the space. The history of the barracks helps explain why this part of the fort is particularly active. The soldiers who lived there endured long hours, harsh conditions, and the constant threat of battle. Many died within these walls, whether from disease, accidents, or combat. Their lives were regimented, dominated by strict routines and constant vigilance. According to legend, this intense energy imprinted itself on the structure. The repetitive rhythms of military life, combined with tragedy and untimely death, have created an environment where the past can sometimes intrude upon the present. The barracks are a place where history is not just remembered, it is alive. Several chilling accounts illustrate the barracks' reputation. One night, a small group of paranormal investigators set up cameras and audio equipment to document the reported activity. Shortly after midnight, the sound of footsteps echoed along the aisles between bunks. The team followed the sound, only to find the corridor empty. Moments later, one of the wooden beds began to shake violently, as if someone had jumped onto it. Simultaneously, a faint, almost imperceptible murmur filled the room, repeating a command in a clipped, military tone. None of the investigators could explain the phenomena, but the footage and recordings captured the unmistakable evidence of something beyond ordinary perception. Other visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures moving among the bunks. These forms are usually dark silhouettes, humanoid in shape but lacking distinct features. Sometimes they appear seated, as though quietly resting, and at other times they stand at attention or march in place. The figures vanish when approached or illuminated by flashlights, often accompanying the visual apparitions or the auditory phenomena. The barracks haunting extends beyond the physical sensations. Many who spend time there report feelings of unease, a sudden heaviness in the chest, or a compulsion to leave the room despite curiosity. Others describe a sense of camaraderie or melancholy, as though the spirits are replaying moments of friendship, discipline, or longing from their lifetimes. It is as if the soldiers, bound by duty and memory, continue their routines, unaware or unconcerned that the living are observing. The barracks are a bridge between past and present, a space where history manifests in tactile, audible, and emotional ways. Paranormal researchers have attempted to quantify the activity using modern technology. Audio devices occasionally record whispers, commands, or the faint hum of conversation. Thermal cameras detect sudden cold spots near bunks, while electromagnetic field sensors sometimes spike without explanation. Attempts to capture video evidence of moving figures are less reliable, though fleeting shadows and strange distortions have been documented. Despite technological efforts, much of the barracks haunting remains subjective, experienced more keenly by those present than by any machine. The barracks' reputation has made it a focal point for tours and storytelling at the fort. Guides often recount the most famous incidents, warning visitors to tread carefully, keep voices low, and respect the space. Some encourage leaning into the experience, listening for whispers, and observing the beds and walls for movement. Those who venture through the barracks at night frequently report a heightened awareness, as if the air itself carries the weight of decades of military life and unfulfilled duty. For those who have experienced it, the barracks are more than haunted, they are alive with memory. Beds shake, voices murmur, shadows flicker, and the unseen soldiers continue their routines, bound to the place where they lived and died. The haunting is not malicious, but persistent, a reminder that history cannot be confined to books or plaques. It lingers, echoing in the footsteps, whispers, and restless energy of those who came before. The barracks of the fort remain a testament to the lives, sacrifices, and enduring presence of soldiers long past. A place where the past continues to unfold in whispers, shadows, and the subtle shaking of wooden bunks. Each year, as March approaches, the fort seems to shift, its walls and courtyards steeped in a sense of solemn anticipation. The date marks the anniversary of the Goliad massacre, a tragic event in which over 300 Texian soldiers were executed by Mexican forces under General Santa Anna's orders in 1836. The massacre left a scar not only on the land but also on the spirits of those who perished. According to legend, on the anniversary of that fateful day, a ghostly procession emerges from the shadows of the fort, an eternal act of remembrance known as the final farewell. Witnesses often describe the experience as both awe-inspiring and chilling. Just as dusk settles over the fort, a faint mist begins to roll through the courtyards, softening the outlines of the stone walls and casting everything in a muted, ethereal light. Within that haze, figures begin to materialize: soldiers in period uniforms, their forms semi-transparent, yet unmistakably human. They move in perfect formation, walking slowly and deliberately along the pathways of the fort, their steps silent but their presence unmistakable. Observers often report a wave of emotion upon seeing them: sadness, reverence, and an overwhelming sense of history brought to life. The procession is not a random gathering of spirits. According to accounts, each figure carries itself with dignity and purpose, a reenactment of the lives they once led. Some hold rifles, others carry flags, while a few appear to offer silent support to the wounded and fallen. Their faces, though faint, convey expressions of resolve and solemnity, reflecting the bravery they displayed in life. Those who have watched the final farewell note that the marchers do not interact with the living. There is no malice, no attempt to frighten. Instead, the procession seems to be a ritual of remembrance, honoring comrades who never returned home. The phenomenon often begins at the fort's main courtyard, where the soldiers once gathered for drills and orders. As the ghostly figures emerge, the air grows noticeably colder, and a heavy silence descends over the area. Birds cease to sing, and the wind drops to nothing, leaving the fort in an almost unnatural stillness. Witnesses frequently describe a sense of awe, combined with a primal unease, as though stepping into a moment suspended between the living world and the realm of spirits. Some report hearing faint whispers, or the soft rustle of fabric, the subtle sounds of life continuing where it ended abruptly. Local lore provides context for the haunting. The Goliad massacre was a moment of profound tragedy and injustice. The Texian soldiers, many captured after surrendering, were executed despite promises of mercy. Their deaths were sudden, violent, and unjust, leaving spirits restless and unable to move on without acknowledgement. Legend holds that, on the anniversary of the massacre, the souls of both the fallen and those who survived but were forever changed gather at the fort, engaging in a ritual of collective memory. The final farewell is said to be their way of honoring the dead, paying tribute to lives lost and comradeship endured in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Eyewitness accounts often include vivid details. One visitor described seeing a row of ghostly soldiers emerge from the mist near the fort's chapel. The figures were perfectly aligned, marching with precise cadence. As they passed, the witness felt a rush of cold air and a heavy weight of sorrow, as if the collective grief of hundreds of souls pressed upon the living. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and the faint glow of lanterns seemed to emanate from the figures themselves. When the procession reached the far gate, the soldiers slowly dissipated into the night, leaving no footprints or trace, only the lingering sense of presence and remembrance. Another account came from a historian documenting the fort's supernatural activity. He arrived just as the sun was setting, noting that the courtyard was quiet and still. As darkness fell, he observed a thin veil of mist forming along the perimeter. Within moments, figures in uniform appeared, marching solemnly in formation. The historian described the scene as utterly mesmerizing, noting that the soldiers' movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Though he could not hear words or commands, he sensed the echoes of past orders and camaraderie. The procession lasted only minutes, yet the impression remained long after the figures vanished, leaving him with an understanding of history as a living, breathing entity. Paranormal investigators have attempted to study the final farewell with modern technology. Video cameras, audio recorders, and thermal imaging sometimes capture unusual phenomena, such as sudden drops in temperature or faint disturbances in the mist. Some footage shows vague, translucent figures moving along expected paths, while others record unexplained lights or shifts in shadows. While skeptics argue these could be illusions caused by light, fog, or the human imagination, The consistency of reports over decades makes the final farewell one of the most compelling and enduring hauntings associated with the fort. The emotional impact of witnessing the procession is profound. Visitors often describe a sense of connection to the past, as if they are participating in a ritual that transcends time. The final farewell reminds the living of the courage, sacrifice, and suffering of those who came before. It is both a historical lesson and a spiritual experience, a moment when the fort transforms into a bridge between worlds, linking the present with the unresolved grief and honor of the past. Despite its somber nature, the final farewell is not threatening. There is no malice in the ghostly marchers, no intent to harm. Instead, it is an expression of respect, a poignant acknowledgement of lives cut short, and the enduring bonds of loyalty and duty. The phenomenon serves as a reminder that history is not only written in books or monuments, but also preserved in memory, energy, and, perhaps, in the spirits who walk among us long after death. For those fortunate enough to witness it, the final farewell leaves an indelible impression. The mist, the figures, and the palpable sense of reverence create an experience that blends history, emotion, and the supernatural into a single unforgettable moment. The fort becomes more than a relic. It becomes a living archive of bravery and loss, a place where the echoes of the past continue to honor those who fell at Gold, forever marching in solemn remembrance. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share with fellow enthusiasts of the eerie and unexplained. Have you experienced something paranormal at Presidio, LA, or another haunted location? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until our next journey into the unknown, stay curious and stay safe.